Weren't you with Dad? Chris, my 5-year-old daughter, came home from a trip to my in-laws' house drenched. Her lips were blue, and she was shaking. I left her with my husband Andrew, so why did she come home by herself? I called Andrew out of shock, but his tone was the same as always. He said, I didn't bring Chris along. I didn't understand what he meant. I didn't know it, but this remark was hiding the craziest secret. My name is So Moore, and I'm 32 years old. The little girl in front of me is Chris, who is 5 years old. When we first got married, we were very close. I remember how happy we were to hug each other when I told him I was pregnant. I went back to work a year after giving birth and was happy with my life. But at some point, our happy life changed. Housework is the wife's job. Even though my wife and I used to do things like housework and cleaning together. 2 years ago, Andrew all of a sudden started giving me all of the housework. But I work too, and I need your help, I said. My friend says that even if both of them work, their wives do all the housework. He replied, you should clean up more, and threw a ragged mop at my face. From then on, he was always saying bad things about the way I cleaned. He would often say to that person, you should take a leaf out of her book. That was Marion Kirk, who works as a maid for his parents. Andrew's dad ran a business and lived in a fancy house. Andrew also worked for him. Chris was also old enough that she couldn't be left alone, but Andrew didn't do much to help with parenting. Hey, what do you think Chris would like for her birthday present? I showed him a toy catalog in the living room late at night, after our daughter had gone to bed, but he only looked at the cover briefly before putting it down. Why do we have to think about things that are so unpleasant? She's our daughter, I told her. Aren't you a little cold? It's a waste of money because kids get bored so quickly, he said. I'm not spending a dime on it. Andrew yelled as he stormed off to his room with the catalog in his hands. I thought he was refusing our daughter, so I wanted to talk to him about it. But Chris woke up and said, Mommy, I need to go to the toilet. This meant that the birthday present talk had to be put on hold. We never found a good time to talk again, and I ended up spending my own money on something a toy shop worker suggested. I'll tell Chris it's a present from both Mom and Dad, I chose. I couldn't describe how I felt as I watched her happily tear the packing paper. At the same time, Andrew started spending a lot of money on himself that he wasn't making. It's for socializing for work, he told me. The fact that hundreds of dollars were being spent every week, though, made me worry about what he was doing. Hey, is it really just a work party? I wanted to know. What? You don't believe me? It's not that. I just think you might be spending too much, I told her. I'm going to be the president of the company one day. I'll pay it all back then, so don't be so petty, Andrew said. He wouldn't listen and kept using the credit card, which put our money in danger since I wasn't making any money. I started to get mad at my husband because of this. But because Andrew and I came from different places, I couldn't fully blame him. Because his mom was a stay-at-home mom, he thinks cleaning is something only women do. Since my husband is the hair, he may be going through things I can't even imagine. I chose to be patient until he realized that women work too. I promised to help him as much as I could until he becomes a great CEO like his dad and is more at ease with his life. After some time, it was a Sunday in the middle of March. Yesterday was my mother-in-law's birthday, and every year we celebrated at my in-laws' house. Their house is just down the road from ours, about a 15-minute walk at an adult's pace. It might take more than twice as long with Chris, though, because she always wants to stop at the park on the way. Also, staying the night before these kinds of important events have become the norm. I can't wait to see Grandpa and Grandma. Chris loved going to see them every time. But I had to go to work on the Saturday before my mother-in-law's birthday, right as we were getting ready to leave with our bags from my in-laws' house. Mommy's got to work. Should we go to Grandma's house tomorrow? Chris was always a pleasure to be around because he was so mature for his age. I did feel bad, though, about making my in-laws take care of a kindergartner. No, I want to go, Chris said. She was ready to go and had her favorite toys packed in her backpack. If we stay, what should we do? Should I take care of her? Let's go to my dad's house by ourselves then. But it's okay, I'll talk to them, he said, picking up the phone and calling my in-laws before I could answer. He began to describe our situation. I took Andrew's phone to at least thank my in-laws because I wanted to. I said, "I'm sorry I forced Chris on you. We're family. There's no need for formalities." "Thank you." That's right, I thought to myself. With the maid and Andrew with her, there's not much to worry about. My husband still doesn't want to help with childcare, but I held my cool and didn't let that show. They finally left our house in the afternoon, and I chose to finish my work and visit my in-laws the next day. I'm off. I quickly grabbed my work bag and got ready to go to the office. There wasn't a cloud in the sky at that time. But as time went on, the weather got worse, and by evening, it was pouring down rain. It's cold, as if to tell the future. After getting home early from work, I stayed up until 6 p.m. to rest. I was in the middle of getting ready for a relaxing bath when the doorbell at the front door rang. I was shocked to see Chris, who was drenched. "Chris, weren't you supposed to go to Grandma's house with Dad?" Chris was shaking because it was so cold. Her lips turned blue, and when I held her hands, they were as cold as ice. She said in a shaking voice, "I couldn't get into the house because I didn't have the keys." But I couldn't understand what was going on. I chose to let her take a bath first, though, because she looked so tired. In the meantime, I called Andrew to let him know what was going on. I asked, "What's going on here?" "I forgot to bring her to my dad's house," he said. "What? I believed you were looking after her." "How could I know? She left on her own." Our daughter started crying out loud on the way to my in-laws, saying she didn't want to go unless Mommy was with her. Even though my husband tried to calm her down, she refused to listen and went back home by herself. However, since it's a straightforward route to our house and she has walked it several times before, I thought she would be fine alone, so she headed to my in-laws' place on her own. "I thought you'd be busy with work, so I didn't contact you." "Wait a minute, didn't you say you were heading to your parents' house right after lunch?" "That was at 6:30 p.m. Chris shouldn't have been on her way to visit my in-laws at that time. Now that I think about it. I had some errands to take care of. It got late because I was wrapping those up." Still, I couldn't stand the fact that he let our daughter come home alone while she was drenched. "Why didn't you at least give her an umbrella?" I tried to, but she said she didn't need it and ran off. But before I could say anything, Andrew, who had been pretty calm up until then, became angry. "You fuss too much. It's all your fault. Why is she such a bad child?" "She is not spoiled at all, no matter how I raise our daughter." Hearing that from my husband, who never paid attention to our daughter, made me so mad that I had to raise my voice. However, he refused to take responsibility for what he did. He finished the call by saying, "She is safe, so there's no problem," and then hung up by himself. When I tried to call him back, it looked like he had turned off his phone, and my in-law's number was set to message. I thought the only thing left to do was talk to her at this point. After things calmed down, I asked her to come over. "Why didn't you visit your grandmother today? You were excited about it." I asked. She looked down and her eyes lost their sparkle. I asked, "Is that true?" As she slowly opened her mouth to talk. She gave a deep nod, but there were still a lot of questions. I looked into everything I could in a short amount of time. That's what it was. Then I learned a shocking truth through something I didn't expect. This is terrible. I clenched my hands and said, "I will never forgive them." I was determined to get back at the person who had caused my daughter so much pain. I then yelled at my in-laws, "I'll be bringing Chris over tomorrow." And I couldn't sleep that night because I was so mad. I went to my in-laws' house the next day. Even the cleaner hadn't come yet. At 8:00 a.m., my daughter was playing in a room upstairs. So I went to the living room on the first floor, where my husband was still sleeping and snoring. "We need to talk," I told him, nudging him awake. "What's the big idea of waking me up so early in the morning?" He was upset. Hey, why do Mom and Dad look so scary? Just sit down. Today is my mother-in-law's birthday, so I really did not want to set up this meeting in the first place. But my mother-in-law thought something wasn't right over the phone, and said it would be better to talk about important things right away instead of later. I need you to do it quickly. He was initially complaining a lot, but after receiving a reprimand from his father, who is also the CEO of the company he works for, he reluctantly followed instructions. Hey, why did she come back yesterday so wet? Did I not tell you that she started to fuss and say she wanted to go back halfway through? Then what is this supposed to be? On the big screen of the TV, I showed a certain movie. What is this? He looked shocked, and he had good reason to be. The screen showed him and Marion, the maid, hugging each other tightly in the living room of my in-laws' house, as if they were in love. When did you film this? This was really filmed with a toy camera I got her for her birthday. Andrew and the maid must not have known they were being watched because the camera was small and looked like a toy. Chris didn't really know how to use the camera, and she didn't seem to know that she was filming them. When I found this video while investigating, I was really shocked. The two in the video paid no attention to the lens. You said you came here in the evening, but you actually left the house right after lunch, didn't you? Well, that's because. And you planned to hang out with her while your parents were away. I can't believe the housekeeper slept with you. My in-laws were at the department store when they got to my in-laws' house because the birthday present they had ordered was being brought. I had already confirmed this detail over the phone with them. So you told her to play near the park because she was in the way, and then you locked her out? Who told you that, Chris? She said she couldn't get into the house because she didn't have the keys, but I didn't understand what she meant, I asked. She said he didn't answer the knock, and he was told she walked to the park, but no one came to get her, and it began to rain, which made things even worse. She did what after I told him not to tell anyone? He made a face and clicked his tongue. The park and our house are very close, and she was able to see the lights on at home and figured I had come back. How could you do such a thing while our daughter was around? Before my husband kicked her out of the house, it looked like my daughter was really into hitting the camera buttons. She didn't seem to see her father having an affair, which was the only good thing about the circumstances. He put his hands together and said, "This was a one-time mistake. I'm sorry. But I had one more trick up my sleeve." Oh, then how do you explain this? I threw a bunch of love letters on the table. They seemed to be from Andrew to Marion. You went through my room without permission. You're the one who said I should clean up more, so I just happened to find it while cleaning every nook and cranny. He worked hard to get the stack of love letters together, but I quickly grabbed one of them. Let's see. To my beloved Marion. Do you call her that? Please stop it. I love you so much. I can't wait to kiss you. Sounds like something a middle schooler wrote. How embarrassing. As red as a crab that had been boiled. He put his hands over his ears. I gave him credit card bills and loan papers that I found in his room's trash as the last blow. You are setting aside a lot of money to buy women's brand name items. Additionally, you have taken on nearly the same amount of debt, right? I clearly matched the numbers on the two papers with my finger. You said you were spending money for work, but you were just splurging on your mistress. Based on the dates on the loan papers and love letters, the most recent one was from 3 years ago. It seems this was not just a one-time mistake. Even though he hadn't said a word until then, my father-in-law finally broke down and spoke. You are despicable. But I can't help it. Marion is cuter than you after all. Are you serious? My husband's dad gave Andrew a mean look, but Andrew didn't seem to care. He imagined himself and made a sleazy grin with his lips spread wide. Marion thinks of me first, and besides, she has a great body. Be quiet. Hey, don't start yelling all of a sudden. You scared me. My husband's father yelled at Andrew, and my wife's mother stood next to him and quietly agreed. He also said that the maid would be fired soon. He begged his parents to forgive him, but they didn't pay any attention. He then tried to pull his arm around my shoulder in a cheeky way. Can't you just make nice with my parents? Why should I have to do that? Because you're my wife, right? Wives should do what their husbands tell them to do. Don't rely on me only when it's convenient for you. I pushed his hand away hard and pushed him away with both hands. I'm planning to consult a lawyer. Are you serious about that? I intend to sue for child support, so be prepared. His parents told him to please think about this again after firing him from his job. He must have felt like he couldn't take me leaving him either. He bowed to me several times while sweating heavily. Please don't abandon me. Unexpectedly, he began to cry, and his face was covered in snot and tears. He looked sad. What you say won't change my mind, no matter what you say. Finally, my husband screamed, I'm so sorry, please forgive me, as he got down on his knees. But because my husband was greedy, our daughter Chris had to be alone in the park in the rain and pain for a while. He had been hurting our family for years. There was no longer any reason to feel sorry for him. I don't want to see your face or Chris ever again. Saying goodbye. I felt terrible because he stayed on the floor and cried as I left my in-laws' house. After that, we split up and agreed to pay each other $1,000 a month in child support. I sued the maid for $20,000 too. It is said that he works late at night at several physical labor jobs because he lost his job and has bills to pay. He hates living in a small room that doesn't have a bathtub. The maid broke up with him and went back to her city, where her parents scolded her very badly and left her with nowhere to go. I've heard she works for the NTI now. In the meantime, Chris and I moved into an apartment and began a new life together. I got a raise in pay because my work was noticed and appreciated. Chris is excited for school to start in April and is working hard on her writing. The best thing about my life is watching her.
Emily, I have 2 things to say to you. I sold our house for $500,000 and bought a new one. Also, I filed for divorce, so today's goodbye.
After 3 months hospital stay, I came home to find strangers living in my house. I called my husband, Michael, right away, and he laughed while telling me this unbelievable news later on. It was utterly chaotic, and although it would be shocking for anyone, I responded with surprising calmness. Can you even move out? You're about to be arrested by the police. Michael's laughter stopped abruptly over the phone, but it returned within 3 seconds.
What are you talking about? Why should I be arrested? I heard you were hospitalized from an accident. Did you hit your head too hard? Maybe you should go back to the hospital and get your head checked.
The one who needs his head checked is Michael. I knew he had a knack for doing dumb things. His arrest by the police was not a bluff, but a certainty. My husband had no idea what was coming when I was getting ready to strike back. A few days later, I called him out to discuss matters further. Parking my car a short distance from the meeting place, I took a deep breath before speaking. Michael, you can't just sell the house on your own, can you? You didn't consult me, did you?
It's in my name, so there's no problem, right? The house is mine, so there's no need to consult you.
No, it's in my name too, remember? It's a joint property, and you can't sell it without my consent.
Yeah, I guess it's in your name too. But I can still sell the house without your consent. In fact, I've already sold it and got $500,000.
Michael reclined confidently with a triumphant smile.
How did I sell the house, you ask?
His face seemed to demand, so I reluctantly asked him to explain. Then, explain how you sold the house.
I guess I have to tell you. Listen closely because I'll only say it once. I sold it privately, just between individuals. Like you said, going through a real estate agent would involve complicated procedures. But if it's a private sale, there are no problems. See? You didn't know that, did you?
Michael had been looking down on me for about a year now, so this was nothing new. With a vulgar laugh, Michael continued his tale.
I work at my father's company, and I'm regarded as a genius salesman. Selling 1 or 2 houses is a piece of cake for someone like me. I even sold it for twice the price, through a private sale. Life is easy, isn't it?
I see. But is that okay? Selling a house privately like that can be legally void, so the sales agreement might as well not exist.
What? That's not true. The person who bought the house agreed to it too.
As I also own the house, I didn't consent to it, so it's impossible. Plus, Michael, you sold it for twice the price without an appraisal. That's a dangerous game you're playing. The sales agreement will be nullified and you'll have to refund the full amount. There might also be a claim for damages from the person who bought the house. Michael's vulgar laughter stopped abruptly. His face paled slightly and his hands trembled a bit. This reaction indicated that Michael was unaware of the implications. Had he known, he wouldn't have attempted a private sales in the first place.
Why do you know so much? You're not lying, right?
There's no benefit in lying here.
That's true. So agree to it, Emily. If you consent to the house sale, everything will be resolved. We're a married couple, so helping each other out is important, right?
We're divorced, remember? Did you forget that you filed for divorce on your own?
Oh, right.
Being so self-centered leads to these kinds of situations. If Michael, who has already purchased a new home, has to pay back the full amount and possibly face claims for damages, he will incur a significant debt. Michael, pale-faced and flustered, began to stammer, but soon seemed to have an idea and spoke up.
Well, it won't matter if it's not discovered, right? The buyer was an elderly person in their 60s and probably didn't notice. Yeah, I should just run away with what's left of the money. Maybe even run away overseas.
That sounds like a great plan. Indeed, if it doesn't get discovered, maybe you can get away with it. That's if it remains undiscovered. Just then, a man appeared behind me. Seeing that man, Michael's eyes bulged out in shock, and he was rendered speechless. His reaction was so comically exaggerated that I couldn't help but burst out laughing. What's with that face? It's rude to our guest who has come all this way. Let me introduce him to you. This is Mr. Kevin Miller.
I don't need an introduction. I know him. This is the old man I sold the house to. Why, Emily? How do you know him?
Well, listen carefully because I'll only say it once. During my hospital stay, Mr. Miller visited me every day. He shared many stories with me, including about you.
He visited you? Why would some random old man visit you, Emily? Don't tell me. You were having an affair with this old man?
At that moment, Mr. Miller and I looked at each other and burst out laughing. Unable to contain ourselves due to Michael's absurd accusation, Mr. Miller regained his composure and explained everything to Michael.
Michael, for me, Emily is a lifesaver. She was hospitalized because she was saving me. That's why I was visiting her. That's all. And I was surprised to find out that you are Emily's husband. I thought she was single since you never visited her at the hospital.
Mr. Miller's tone was gentle but contained a firm anger. As Mr. Miller stated, Michael had never visited me during my hospitalization. From before my hospitalization, Michael had been cold and unresponsive, likely planning to discard me already.
Oh, come on, Mr. Miller. Please don't be angry. I was just too busy with work to visit her at the hospital. Besides, it was just a fracture. It's not about the severity of the injury. It's inconceivable to neglect your wife while she's hospitalized, and your attitude says it all about how you usually ignore Emily. It's truly humiliating to have been deceived by you. That house, by the way, wasn't worth $500,000 but $250,000. I will sue you for a full refund.
Mr. Miller's words and gaze sharpened, and Michael became increasingly flustered, desperately searching for a way out. Seeing this, I decided to play my next move. And by the way, Michael, tell me about the divorce papers. How did you submit them to the office?
Well, how? I just wrote the names, signed it, and submitted it.
I thought so. So you wrote my name and signed it without my permission, right? That's forgery of a private document and use of forged private document. Both are clear crimes. I've already filed a police report.
What? A crime? A police report? Are you saying the police arrest you mentioned was...
The day I returned from the hospital, Michael had told me,
I've filed for divorce.
And I immediately questioned this. Our relationship had died down, but we never discussed about divorce before. Naturally, I had no memory of signing the divorce papers, so the only conclusion was that Michael has signed on my behalf. By the way, regarding the house sale, I can also file a fraud complaint. The police are always on top of their games, so you might get arrested soon, Michael. You've really messed up.
Hey, Emily, let's forget about the divorce. I'll have it annulled. You don't want to divorce me, right? Let's just pretend this never happened.
Faced with my husband's ludicrous proposal, I was utterly dismayed. There was no way to undo what had been done. Michael had intended to discard me, and after such actions, there was no continuing our marriage. Moreover, Michael was still hiding important details. At this point, I took a further step to get to the heart of the matter. No need to annul it, Michael. I'm prepared too, with my own divorce papers. I was planning to file them even if you hadn't. Could you sign them now? And don't forget the alimony.
What? Why do you have divorce papers ready? And what do you mean by alimony? There's no way I'm paying that.
Oh, did you think it wasn't discovered? Her name is Sarah White, right? Your affair partner. She's quite beautiful. Michael, you really did something, huh? Upon hearing the specific name, Michael froze as if time had stopped. Yes, Michael had an affair partner named Sarah. The house sale, the purchase of a new home, the divorce, all were for his affair partner. Michael had been secretly having an affair even before I was hospitalized for 3 months. That was why he had become cold towards me. Michael, having underestimated and disrespected me, probably assumed he wouldn't get caught. I glared at him with utter contempt. He seemed momentarily intimidated, but he quickly retorted.
Don't make false accusations. You don't have any proof, do you? I don't know any woman named Sarah. Demanding alimony based on your wild fantasies. That's the real fraud.
Are you sure you want to say that? You might regret it later. It would be better for you to just apologize and pay the alimony.
What? Are you threatening me?
I'm just giving you advice. You definitely cheated, and I'm going to prove it now. Saying this, I turned and pointed to a particular location. My car was parked a short distance from the meeting place. Suddenly, the car doors swung open forcefully. Out stepped a petite woman around 4 feet 9 inches tall, with the beauty of an actress. Hello, Michael. Have you forgotten about me? After such a passionate night, that seems rather harsh, doesn't it?
Hey, Emily, you brought Sarah in your car? No wonder you parked it a bit away.
You didn't notice at all, Michael. By the way, I had Sarah's and my phones on call, with a speaker on, so she could hear everything. Everything was completely transparent. After noticing Michael's infidelity and investigating, I reached out to Sarah. Instead of confronting Michael first, I contacted Sarah. When I revealed that I was Michael's wife, she was genuinely shocked. This was because Michael had lied to her about being single. Thinking they were in a serious relationship, Sarah was furious when she realized she had been deceived. She apologized profusely to me and agreed to help discipline Michael, leading us to this moment.
I'll be a witness. Now you have to admit it, right? Would you like me to show the evidence? My phone is full of lovely memories with you, from fancy restaurant dinners to pictures of you sleeping in bed.
Michael, there's no escape now. Just admit your guilt and apologize to everyone. After that, accept your due consequences. I'm demanding a divorce and alimony. For Mr. Miller, you'll need to refund the entire amount from the house sale. After finishing my speech, Michael dropped to his knees vigorously. After a few seconds of silence, Michael cautiously spoke up.
Could we perhaps discuss making payments in installments? I really don't have any money right now. Please, I promise I'll pay.
Michael pleaded desperately, his face shrinking in size. Both Mr. Miller and Sarah frowned upon seeing this. The two were unaware that Michael had bought a new home. They thought he still had $500,000 on hand. Mr. Miller, Michael bought a new home. Besides, he spent everything at fancy restaurants to impress Sarah. He doesn't have any means to repay.
What? Is that true? Then I have no choice but to file a damage report right away. Well, that's unfortunate. Take care, Michael. No. Wait a minute. I said I'd pay in installments. I do have a way to repay. I'm an elite salesman at Hurring Corporation, remember? I gave you my business card when we dealt with the house sale. I'm the top performer there, so please just be patient.
Michael desperately tried to prevent a police report. Hurring Corporation, where my father-in-law worked, was well known as a major company. If Michael was indeed recognized there, he might be able to make the payments. However, I shook my head and advised Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller, you mustn't believe him. Michael absolutely cannot pay. Let's go ahead without hesitation and file that damage report.
Emily, how can you be so sure? I can definitely pay it back. I've been working diligently and have achievements to show for it.
What? You're about to be fired and soon to be unemployed. I don't think you can really claim you'll definitely be able to pay.
Fired? Me? That's impossible. Don't make assumptions.
Do you think I made that decision? Michael, you really know nothing. Just wait, I'll make it clear to you soon. Here I pointed again to my car parked at a distance. Just like before, the car door swung open briskly. Out stepped an elderly couple. Michael's face rapidly paled, and his body began to tremble. The elderly couple were his parents. As they slowly approached, their expressions were fierce, creating a tense atmosphere all around.
Dad, Mom, why are you here? Emily told us everything. We were waiting in her car too, listening to the conversation over the speaker. Michael, it seems you've done something terrible. You sold the house without consulting Emily and even filed for divorce on your own? And the house sale was done privately, wasn't it? What were you thinking, causing so much trouble for so many people? Seriously, not just Sarah, but my parents were in on this too?
This matter had already been reported to my in-laws. It was essential to bring them here today to deal maximum damage to Michael.
I'm thoroughly disappointed in you. You told us everything was fine between you two, but that was a lie, wasn't it? You're no longer welcome in our home, and you're fired from the company. I'm fired? Wait, Dad. Sure, I cheated, but that has nothing to do with the company. Think it over. And about the new home, it was also for you and Mom. I bought it thinking about your retirement. I want you to stay healthy and well.
Michael appeared to be trying to win over his parents. He seemed to be playing the good husband with a fabricated reason for the purchase, but it didn't resonate with his parents at all. Instead, their anger only seemed to grow as they glared at him with a fearsome expression.
Michael, no matter what you say, you're fired. It's decided. Take this time to reflect and look for another job. Understood? This is a joke. How much do you think I've contributed to the company? We could overcome tough times because I was there, and now you're just going to throw me away? How can you do this?
Michael's anger flared as he appealed to my father-in-law. It's true that Michael had worked hard. His results at Hurring Corporation, a major company, were indeed due to his efforts. According to what his parents had told me, Michael had also been exceptionally diligent in his studies during his student days, all for the sake of working at my father-in-law's company, eventually planning to take it over. Naturally, his parents were well aware of Michael's intentions. Nevertheless, his father spoke firmly.
Yes, I appreciate everything you've done, Michael. I've been hard on you, but you've always followed without complaining. Right? Then you'll retract the firing, right? I intend to repay Mr. Miller. I'll work hard and change my ways. No, that won't do. I'll say it again. Your firing is final. Michael, please accept it. Why? I'm begging you. Emily, did you say something unnecessary? That must be it, right? Confess.
Now Michael directed his anger at me. He seemed desperate. Of course, I had said nothing extra. Separately from this incident, there were reasons why my father-in-law had to fire him. House sale, new home purchase, divorce, infidelity, and there was one more thing Michael had committed, a grave crime. Michael, you should confess. You have been stealing company funds and extorting a colleague.
What? Stolen company money? You mean embezzlement? And he was extorting a colleague? Is that true?
Yes, that's the case. There was a whistleblower. One of the subordinates who had been extorted found the courage to stand up, and then one fact after another came to light. That was why my father-in-law would not retract the firing. Michael had gone too far for any redemption. Now that everything was out in the open, Michael had no excuses left. He looked around at everyone's faces, but I shook my head slightly. Seeing this, he seemed to resign himself and collapsed to his knees. Apologize, Michael. That's all you can do now. After that, you need to pay for your sins and start over.
No, I don't want to. I don't want to be arrested. Please, Emily, do something. We're married, right? Dad, Mom, help me. Don't conveniently bring up being married. As Emily said, all you can do is apologize and atone for your sins. Relying on your wife only when you're in trouble, after you file for divorce without her knowledge. It's truly pathetic.
Both Mr. Miller and Sarah looked at Michael with pity. It was inevitable. Michael had only ever thought about himself, even at the very end. Seeing Michael completely silenced, my heart felt a bit lighter. However, the next moment, I was struck by a huge shock.
Emily, don't get cocky. Don't preach to me.
Suddenly standing up and shouting, he lunged at me. I couldn't react in time and was caught by him. He grabbed my collar so tightly I couldn't breathe or speak. He was strangling me, and I almost lost consciousness. But immediately, Michael was sent flying through the air, and I was released. Coughing from this suffocation, I looked at the person who had thrown Michael. It was Sarah.
Michael, I had no idea you were so rotten. A man who lays hands on a woman is scum. I will never forgive that.
Everyone present was understandably stunned. Sarah, who is only 4 feet 9 inches tall, had effortlessly thrown Michael. I later found out that Sarah had won a national judo championship in high school. She had started judo because a girlfriend of hers was being harassed by a boy in their class. Since then, she had been throwing men who harassed women. Softness controls hardness. It's as if the saying was made for her.
Wow, that was incredible. What a throw. Emily, are you alright?
Yes, I'm fine. I was quite shocked, though. Should we call the police? This is assault, isn't it?
Yes, he grabbed a defenseless woman. There's no excuse for him. Okay, I'll call 911. Wait, please, I was wrong. I'll do anything. Even grovel. Just don't call the police. Oh, sorry, I've already dialed 911. If you have something to say, you can tell it to the police. This can't be happening. How could I have been so foolish? Someone help me.
Michael sobbed and lamented as he regretted his actions. Everyone sighed deeply in unison. Thus, a day that seemed long yet short drew to a close. Later, I officially divorced Michael. He was criminally charged by Mr. Miller for the house sale, and he faced massive debts due to alimony and damages. He had to let go of the newly bought house, but he was still drowning in debt. Michael was utterly broken, and no one was there to help him. It was entirely his own doing. It was only natural. He would likely live a lonely life from now on. But the story didn't end there. Michael approached me, wanting to reconcile.
Hey, Emily, I've realized something lately. I really need you. You must be lonely too, right? You've always been a housewife, and life must be hard. So let's get back together.
He really made me laugh. Hasn't he learned anything? That was the first thought that came to mind, but I was too dismayed to even say it out loud. I can't deny I'm lonely being alone, but there's a 0% chance I would get back together with Michael. That's an absolute no. Moreover, Michael doesn't understand anything about me. I decided to update him on my situation. I have no problems with my life, you know. I've gone back to work.
What? You went back to work? You were a housewife.
Before I dated you, Michael, I worked at a real estate agency. You know Nez Real Estate, right?
Nez Real Estate? That's a major company. Oh, so that's why you knew so much about real estate. It turns out you're more of an elite than me.
Michael seemed lost for words over the phone, but then he seemed to have an idea.
So you're making good money now, right? Please help me. If Nez Real Estate pays well, I'll do anything you say if you help me.
Really, you understand nothing. It's because you can only think of yourself that you're in this situation. Michael, you need to change yourself first. And please don't involve me in your life anymore. Goodbye. Just before hanging up, Michael was still shouting something, but I blocked his contact without hesitation. Now I'm enjoying living alone. The house Michael has sold without my knowledge was returned and sold as part of the divorce settlement. My work is going well and my days are fulfilling. Recently, I started judo as a new challenge. Of course, Sarah is the instructor. Since then, we've become good friends, almost like comrades in arms in private life too. I decided to take the plunge and try judo when I heard she was teaching it. It can be used for self-defense, and more importantly, it can strengthen the mind. This incident was largely due to Michael's rampage, but my own weakness was also to blame. When Michael's infidelity came to light, I should have faced him seriously. If I had acted sooner, perhaps a different future could have been possible. It's too late to talk about what ifs, but I wanted to change myself too. When I casually checked my phone, there was a message from Mr. Miller.
You are my lifesaver. I am glad to have met you. You have saved me.
Reading that made me want to start anew and move on from the hurt Michael caused me. I'm aiming to appreciate every encounter and be truthful with myself and everyone else. That's all that's on my mind right now.
Hey, David, what is this? It's catering. What do you think? Looks pretty nice, huh? I found out there's a new place by the station that does catering too, so I decided to get some food from them. How about this? They even brought wine. We're having a party now. A party? For what? Today isn't some special anniversary or anything. Come on, it's fine. Now you don't have to worry about preparing dinner. You can relax, right? when I went shopping for dinner and came back. The kitchen table was lined with all kinds of dishes, and I couldn't help but shout. I'm Julia Baker, married for 6 years. After getting married, I quit my job and moved in with my in-laws. I didn't mind the idea of continuing to work. But my husband, who thought it was shameful for a man to let his wife work, convinced me to stay home. My husband works for a large company, and his salary was decent, and my father-in-law was still working before his retirement. So financially, we were okay. My mother-in-law doesn't seem to like housework that much, and when it comes to cooking, she's apparently hopeless. So, before we got married, my husband complained that the table at his parents' house was always filled with store-bought side dishes. Regardless, my father-in-law and my husband felt that the ready-made meals were way better than my mother-in-law's cooking. So, they must have wanted me to move in and take care of the household chores. My father-in-law, who didn't get along well with my husband, is a practical type. On the other hand, my husband and my mother-in-law have very similar personalities. And they get along well, but when it comes to cooking, both my husband and father-in-law agree on the same thing. I was curious about what kind of food she would make, but I never asked. Both my husband and mother-in-law are big spenders, and if left alone, they would spend all their money in no time. So, my father-in-law managed the household finances. Even my practical father-in-law had a hard time dealing with my mother-in-law's wasteful spending. My father-in-law was really kind, and after I lost my own parents, he treated me like his own child, which made me very happy. A year before his retirement, he thought about the future of my in-laws and, just in case they ever needed caregiving, he completely renovated the house. However, just before his retirement, my father-in-law fell ill and passed away unexpectedly. I had hoped to repay my parents by doing things for them once my father-in-law retired. So I was deeply saddened and lonely. But my mother-in-law and husband, instead of being sad, seemed almost pleased that there was no one left to scold them. After he was gone, my husband and mother-in-law started wasting money even more. I tried to say something, but they just acted like I was some annoying fly. You knew I went shopping for dinner, didn't you? I was having a great conversation with Mom about the new restaurant near the station. We could have gone there, but we decided catering was a good option. It's nice to have a drinking party at home sometimes. So, what about the ingredients I bought? Just put them in the freezer or something. Use them later. You should have figured that out without me having to say it. Figures. How much did all this cost? With the wine, it was exactly $300. Pretty affordable, right? $300. I couldn't understand how $300 could be considered affordable. How can you spend that much on a single meal at home? Even though my husband earns a good salary, it's not like we have money just lying around. If we keep spending without thinking ahead, it's obvious we'll run out of money. I've been working part-time at a supermarket lately to help with the household finances. But my husband just sees it as a way for me to pass the time. I'm earning well, so we don't need to worry about anything. He always says things like that, but we can barely save anything. How many times have I thought that if my father-in-law were still around, things would be different? It had been 3 months since my father-in-law passed. Even though I was supposed to be working only on weekdays, I got a call from my manager that day asking if I could come in since someone else was sick. And they were short-staffed. I didn't want more wasteful spending. So I prepared lunch before I left. When I came back home after work, my mother-in-law and husband were waiting for me with grins on their faces. You kept this from me, huh? What are you talking about? We found your secret stash of money. Excuse me? Look at this. My husband proudly stood in front of me and showed me my personal savings passbook. Oh. You always say I waste money, but you've secretly been saving up, huh? And you have $300,000. That's not what it is. No excuses. Your $300,000 savings are going to be managed by me and you. If you disagree, just get out. What? Get out? What do you mean? I mean exactly what I said. If I let these two have control over money, it would be gone in no time. But they don't even realize that. You're just like my husband. You're so annoying. You're in the way when you're around. That's right. Dad was still earning, so it was acceptable. But you have no earnings and act all high and mighty. I'm working part-time. Do you honestly think that little bit of money counts? Don't act so tough with that low income. I thought it might help with the household finances. We're fine as long as we get rid of you, the nuisance. Are you serious? Of course. This is my decision. Then my husband showed me the completed divorce papers. I couldn't believe he was prepared for it to this extent, but at that moment, I lost all feelings for him. To think that he would bring up divorce so easily just showed me how little I meant to him. In that case, I decided to stop saying unnecessary things and just leave as he said. Now that my father-in-law is gone, I have no attachment to this house. I had thought of them as family and tried to say many things. But I realized they were not family at all. Fine. I'll leave. You're not getting this money. It's from my earnings, saved by me, so technically it's mine. Feel free to do whatever you want. I didn't care anymore. It felt like, do whatever you want. I handed over my bank card and told him the PIN, just as my husband asked. The next day, I immediately started packing. And by the following week, I had rented an apartment and moved out. I filed for divorce right away. My part-time job was from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., but I managed to get switched to full-time. Since fewer people were able to work weekends, they were happy when I said I could work on Saturdays and Sundays. It felt nice to make someone happy. When my father-in-law was alive, he always said kind things to me, but my husband and mother-in-law always took my efforts for granted. They never once gave me a word of appreciation. I didn't feel lonely at all after being alone. I realized I hadn't truly been part of the family for a long time. There were times when I'd finish my housework and go to take a bath, only to find that the water had been drained. When I asked my mother-in-law, she'd knowingly say, "Oh, you haven't taken a bath yet," and laugh, while my husband just watched and laughed. One time, I was feeling awful with a fever and couldn't get out of bed. My husband woke me up and told me to make breakfast. My mother-in-law found it amusing and said, having a fever is just a sign of weakness. After my father-in-law passed away, they both seemed to take pleasure in harassing me. Looking back, I wonder why I put up with it for so long. I must have been numb to it. I regretted not cutting ties sooner. Sometime after the split, the neighbor's wife next to my in-laws popped by my part-time job and mentioned that my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law were living it up pretty lavishly. They had even bought a new car. And packages were arriving almost every day. They were also buying the latest electronics. The other day, I visited their house. Everything was new, and I was shocked. They even ordered high-end sushi for dinner. They said, "You've never eaten such fancy sushi, right? Is that so? Just the other day, your mother-in-law came back in a taxi with so many brand-name bags. She couldn't carry them all." I could easily imagine my ex-mother-in-law shopping with glee. Their house was at the end of a narrow alley, and cars couldn't park in front. They had a car but rented a nearby paid parking spot. My father-in-law would go get the car when they needed it. And my mother-in-law would wait at home. Since my mother-in-law couldn't drive, she usually took a taxi when no one was around to drive. I guess people saw her unloading her bags in front of the alley. I thought, if they were spending money so recklessly, it would run out quickly, but now, it wasn't my problem. Honestly, I didn't care what happened. Oh, it sounds fun. Yeah, they're eating out every day. People in the neighborhood are even wondering if they won the lottery. But how long do you think they can keep living like that? The neighbor said this with a slight smirk, almost implying that it would end badly. Knowing my mother-in-law, I imagined her calling people over to flaunt her new purchases and take pride in them. She loved to brag whenever she bought something new. She'd invite people over to show it off, usually with expensive sweets or specialty desserts. The people who came over were mostly there for the high-end treats. My mother-in-law thought they all admired and envied her. As long as they had money, it would be fine, but once it ran out, people would scatter. Just like the flies. I couldn't help but think how amusing it would be to see their faces when that happens, but I didn't want to get involved, so I let them be. However, they didn't let me be. Before I had even reached the 1-year mark since the divorce, I got a call from my ex-husband. "You tricked me, didn't you?" "Huh? What are you talking about?" "Yesterday, the bank called me. They said they couldn't process my loan payments." "Wait, does that mean you've already spent all of the $300,000? I went to the bank, and they showed me the passbook. I was shocked. I didn't realize this money. You didn't realize it until the bank called you? That was unbelievable. Not only had they spent $300,000 and less than a year after the divorce, but they hadn't even checked the passbook. It looks like they took all the money out with the bank card and didn't record anything in the passbook. How could they not know what was left? What were they thinking? That $300,000 was my father's retirement money." "Yeah. So why was it in your passbook? Were you planning to steal it?" "That's not true. It was your father's will." "What do you mean?" "A year before my father-in-law passed away, they renovated the house. The house was old, with narrow hallways and a big step at the entrance. So the renovation was extensive. My mother-in-law kept adding requests. And the original budget of $100,000 doubled and then some. Since their house was at the end of a narrow alley, moving tools and materials was more difficult and expensive than usual. They took out a loan. And the plan was to pay it off with my father-in-law's retirement money once it was available. But before he retired, my father-in-law fell ill. After receiving a terminal diagnosis, he entrusted me with managing the household finances. He had me open a new account in my name so that the loan payments and other bills could be paid from it. He used up his remaining vacation days and arranged for the retirement money to be deposited into that account. The retirement money was supposed to be deposited 3 months after his retirement. And my father-in-law was worried that he might not live that long. Although it was typically deposited into the account where his salary was paid. He had explained the situation to the company, and they agreed to deposit it into my account. Unfortunately, his fear came true. Before he passed away, my father-in-law had asked me to settle the renovation payment with the retirement money and manage the rest of it. But my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law found the passbook immediately after the money was deposited. If they had looked closely, they would have seen that the money came from my father-in-law's company, and they should have realized the loan payments were coming from that account. But they were so blinded by the $300,000 that they didn't care to check. Originally, it was my father-in-law's money. And I had no claim to it, so I didn't mind leaving it behind. But I never imagined it would be gone in less than a year. Honestly, I'm impressed by how much you managed to waste. So, what about the renovation loan? You didn't pay it off, so of course, it's still there. I think the monthly payments were around $2,000. It's a 10-year loan, so there are still about 8 years left. What? Why didn't you notice? You knew my father-in-law's retirement money was coming in. You didn't care where the money went? I thought my mom was handling it. When I asked her, she said she thought I was managing it. Oh wow, you two are really alike. Why didn't you tell me? I wasn't asked. But if it was really savings from our marriage, I would have demanded my share in the property division. How could he assume I was so oblivious that I wouldn't figure this out? I couldn't save a lot because my ex-husband was always spending recklessly. And honestly, even if I was good at budgeting, there's no way I could have saved $300,000 in 6 years as a stay-at-home wife. Saving $50,000 per year over 6 years. It doesn't take a genius to figure out how much I would have needed to save monthly to reach that amount. David's salary was about $3,000 after tax, but after taking out the living expenses, there was no way we could save that much. What's all this talk about, having money? How much does he think he earns? It's just absurd. This is your fault for not saying anything. Come back home, work full-time, and pay the loan. What? Of course. First of all, the money is being withdrawn from your account, so it's your responsibility to pay it. That's not true. The account is in my name, but the loan is under my father-in-law's name. And now that he's passed away, the inheritance goes to you and your mother. The people who are responsible for the payment now are you two, the heirs. Well, if that's the case, I might as well remarry you. How about it? For someone like you, with no family, this would be great, wouldn't it? I'm not sure why you'd think that at all. It's hard for me to wrap my head around what kind of thinking leads to that thought. I never expected him to say something like that. I knew he didn't realize the money was from my father-in-law's retirement fund, but I expected he might complain about it once he figured that out. But asking to get back together was completely unexpected. To think he didn't even realize the money had run out until the bank called him because of insufficient funds, what kind of life was he living? I don't care about any of this. David was still shouting something on the phone, but I didn't want to waste any more time on him, so I hung up. Not long after, the neighbor's wife, clearly eager to tell me something, came over and said that my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law had sold the house and moved out. Before they moved, they fought a lot over money. I heard they even sold the new car. You could often hear them yelling, calling each other good for nothing. I even thought about calling the police a few times. The neighbor seemed a little too happy about it. Now that I think about it, my ex-mother-in-law used to mock the neighbor's husband for having a low-paying job at a factory. I'm sure that news reached her too. For the neighbors, it probably felt like a breath of fresh air to have the in-laws leave. No, I'm sure that's exactly how they feel. Your ex-husband was a good guy, though. But I guess you're better off divorced now. It's not your problem anymore, the neighbor said, laughing happily. Thanks to you. It seems that my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law had spent so much money that even after selling the house, they couldn't clear the debts. The house was renovated and looked nice, but the location wasn't great. Particularly, there was no place to park a car. The nearest rental parking lot was a little far away, so the property's value was much lower compared to those facing the main street in the neighborhood. I heard they were living in some small, cheap apartment now, but my ex-mother-in-law, who's bad at housework, can't even keep it clean. It's reportedly filled with garbage. And they were about to get kicked out. David came crying to me again. His phone rang several times, but I ignored it. Then, after his part-time work one day, he ambushed me. I want to get back together with you. I already told you no. It seems he had been showing up to work every day in unwashed clothes. And his boss had warned him about his unkempt appearance. He didn't change. And was demoted with a salary cut. It seems like people were spreading rumors about his untidy way of living, and now he's on the list to be let go from the job. Apparently, his salary was entirely taken up by monthly bills. And the only thing they had left to rely on was his mother's pension. But even that had been squandered, and only about half of it remained. So, he said that living together with his mother was becoming difficult. It was clear he wanted me to work and depend on my income. My mom's still terrible at housework, and the food she cooks is terrible. I really need you back. The room's a mess, just come back and clean it up. Cut the jokes. I'm not coming back. How could you even say something like that? Please. Help me. No. Stop following me. If you ambush me again, I will call the police. I turned and ran away, leaving David standing there with tears in his eyes. When I looked back once, he was still standing there, frozen. Did he think that if he showed his face, I'd be convinced and agree to come back? It's ridiculously naive. This is what's called getting what you deserve. It has nothing to do with me. After that, I was recognized for my work ethic and transferred to the supermarket's head office, where I was hired as a full-time employee. I was so happy to see that hard work really pays off. Then, I was out doing some market research when I saw my ex and my former mother-in-law at a discount store, buying some leftover, cheap lunches. And they were both wearing really tattered clothes. From the looks of it, David had probably already been laid off from his job, but of course, I didn't approach them. I left quickly to avoid being seen. Now, every day is very fulfilling. I do feel sorry that I couldn't do more for my late father-in-law. But he had told me, if it ever feels too hard, you can always run away. Live the life that's best for you. Perhaps he knew this would happen. Dad, I'm living my life the way I want now. When I visited his grave to report this, I almost felt like I saw his smile. I'll continue to live my life in my own way, making the most of every day. Enuresis smells. Both of you stay away from me. Sean yelled at Lisa and me. He had a scary face I had never seen before, and Lisa gasped in fear. But I couldn't understand what Sean was saying. Who on earth is he talking about when he mentions enuresis? Huh? Who are you talking about? Don't play dumb. Lisa, you wet your bed, right? This pee smell must be from that. Sean pointed at Lisa. With a scary face from her father, Lisa was completely frightened. I spoke up for her instead. Lisa didn't wet the bed. Neither her bed cover nor her pajamas are wet. What? Sean's eyes widened. I thought this might be my chance to escape from Sean. My name is Alyssa Brown. I am 35 years old. I live with my husband Sean, who is 3 years older than me, and our 5-year-old daughter Lisa. I used to work at a company before my child was born. But since she was born, I've been working from home. I like working, so I studied design on my own. Thanks to that, my skills have improved so much that I now have work every day. Sean doesn't understand anything about my job. He scoffs at it as if my work from home is just a way to earn pocket money. I don't like Sean's attitude, so I try not to show him much of my work. Lisa is a very honest and a good girl. Perhaps because she sees me being busy with work at home. She helps me by folding laundry and setting the table during meals. To me, she is like a little manager. Although she is only 5, I am happy that she tries to help with the household chores. I am really glad she is not like the unpleasant Sean. Until we got married, I thought Sean was a charming and an attractive man. I am the type who passionately falls in love. The moment I met Sean, I fell in love with him. I was determined, I will definitely marry this man. I never thought he would change so much after we actually got married. Hey, isn't my dinner ready yet? It's already 7 o'clock. One day, when I had just returned from shopping and was about to take a break, Sean came up to me and said bluntly. He was in a shirt and underwear, a sloppy look. His socks were scattered around the entrance. Sean works at a major materials manufacturer and returns home exactly at 6 p.m. every day. From what I hear, it's a very good standing and financially stable company. Sorry. The traffic was terrible. I'll start cooking now, so wait a moment. What? You're telling me, the husband, to wait? Dinner has to be at 7 o'clock, I've told you. Can't help it. I had errands to run. By the way, did you bring in the laundry? I usually ask Sean, if you come home and have nothing to do, please help with the housework. I am well aware that Sean does not help with the housework, but married seniors have told me. Education is key with husbands. If you keep educating them without giving up, it will get easier. So I keep asking him to help out with the intention of educating my husband. Lisa did the laundry. Lisa did? Then what were you doing? I didn't even need to ask. I could smell beer on Sean's breath. I realized that Sean's cheeks were flushed. It's embarrassing that he lets our 5-year-old daughter bring in the laundry while he just drinks alcohol. His face turns red as soon as he drinks. I'm tired from work. You're inhumane, ordering your husband to do housework. John and Ned, my colleagues, say their wives do all the housework. Compared to them, I'm pitiful. Having a wife who tells me to do housework after work. John and Ned are Sean's colleagues. Sean often brings up their names. I've met both, and indeed their wives are full-time homemakers. It's childish to compare with other families. I sighed and started preparing dinner. Sean's bad point wasn't just his lack of help with housework. Lisa, you said you wanted this, right? Daddy worked hard and earned money, so I bought it for you. Sean gave Lisa the popular Nancy doll among girls. When you go to a toy store, this doll is always prominently displayed and is quite expensive. Nancy doll.
Yay!
Thank you, Daddy. Lisa jumped at Sean and kissed him on the cheek. Sean nodded in satisfaction and lifted Lisa up. Lisa was overjoyed, holding the Nancy doll. This kind of thing has happened several times already. Sean doesn't do any childcare, but he seems to put his heart into spoiling Lisa. He buys her things that I refused when she wanted them. He thinks this will make her grow attached to him. Did you buy a toy again? I've been telling you to stop spoiling her. When I slightly admonished him, Sean glared at me. It's just this much. I bought it with my own money that I earned. Unlike you, I earn a lot of money every month. It's my right to spend my money however I want. Lisa was not paying attention to our conversation, playing with the Nancy doll. Sean, having gained Lisa's trust, was too proud to care about my words. I worried that Lisa would grow up spoiled. So, I took the Nancy doll away from her. I'll hold on to this for now. I'll give it back to you on your birthday, okay? Why? Lisa raised her voice in dissatisfaction after the Nancy doll was taken from her. This is something Daddy worked very hard to get for you. Isn't it better to receive it on a special day? I guess so. Surprisingly, Lisa nodded in agreement. Sean muttered discontentedly, but I felt relieved inside that Lisa was well behaved. Instead, how about we go somewhere fun this Sunday? I suggested this to cheer up the downcast Lisa, and her face lit up immediately.
Yay!
Lisa was thrilled, as if she had already forgotten about the doll incident. Hey, how about we go to the amusement park this Sunday? I looked at Sean, hoping he would agree since it was a plan to entertain Lisa. But Sean was scratching the back of his head as if it were a hassle. I can't that day. I have plans. What? But. Plans? It's unusual for Sean, who typically lounges around at home on Sundays. Can't be helped. I made these plans a while ago. We can go to the amusement park another time. Sigh. I was stunned, and Lisa looked downcast again. I said to Lisa, then, how about just the two of us go, and she smiled again and said, yes. That's good. She seems happy even if it's just the two of us. Still, I'm curious about Sean's plans. But, even if I ask, I'll probably only get a vague response. I decided to just be happy if Lisa is happy. Although Sean acts important at home without doing any housework or childcare, I'm begrudgingly thankful that he brings a stable income every month. However, something perplexing has been happening lately. What's this about? At the end of the month, I go to the bank to calculate next month's household expenses. But this time, when I looked at the passbook for our joint account, I couldn't believe my eyes. The balance section of the passbook. which is usually noted with the same amount withdrawn each month for household expenses, showed that the balance had inexplicably dropped to $5 in the past month. I hurriedly checked the dates when the money was withdrawn. Every other day, there were traces of $100 or $200 being withdrawn. This certainly explains why the balance was only $5. But who? It had to be Sean. There's no other explanation. As soon as I realized it, I felt a heat rush to my head. What on earth did he spend so much money on? My mind whirled with questions, but no matter how much I thought, I couldn't find an answer. That night, I waited for Sean to return home to confront him about the truth. But even after his usual quitting time, there was no sign of him coming home. It was rare for him to be late because of overtime. I'm home. How long had I waited? When I heard Sean's voice from the entrance, I glanced at the clock, and the date had changed. Welcome back. You're late. I had to do overtime. Sean's gait was unsteady, and he slurred his words, reeking of alcohol. He was clearly drunk. Knowing this, it was infuriating to hear such an obviously false excuse from Sean. You could have told me you'd be late. I made dinner and everything. What? Why do I have to report every little thing to you? Figure it out yourself. Useless. I'm tired from work. Unlike you, I'm not just working as a hobby. Even drunk, Sean didn't forget to make a sarcastic remark. I felt sad knowing deep down he despised me. Without even taking a shower, Sean rolled onto his bed in his room and fell asleep. Just watching his careless figure made me sigh. I lay down in bed, feeling unresolved about the time I spent waiting for him. The next morning, as I busily prepared breakfast, a groggy Sean stomped over. He approached Lisa, who was watching TV, and spoke to her abruptly. Lisa, did you doodle on the back of this contract? What? Sean presented her with a piece of paper. Indeed, there were marks from Lisa's drawings on it. Lisa always drew on scrap paper. So it was clear that she had simply drawn on the back of the paper as usual. This is an important contract with a client. What are we going to do about this silly drawing? Seeing her father, who usually buys her anything she wants, glaring at her with a scary face. Lisa looked frightened and shrank. I'm sorry. From the kitchen counter, I could see Lisa looking downhearted. I hurriedly washed my hands and rushed to her. Sean, there's no need to be so angry. Of course I'm angry. This contract is already signed by the client. What are you going to do about it? Sean glared at us as if looking at something filthy. It's your fault for leaving it around. Do you think Lisa understands that it's a contract? It's because of your poor parenting. If you were a good mother, you would have taught her properly. No matter what I said to Sean, it was a situation of you say this, I say that. And we couldn't settle anything. Suddenly, Sean pinched his nose and made a face. Without even thinking why, he opened his mouth. Anuresis smells. Both of you stay away from me. Sean yelled at Lisa and me. He had a scary face I had never seen before, and Lisa gasped in fear. But I couldn't understand what Sean was saying. What on earth does he mean by anuresis? Huh? Who are you talking about? Don't play dumb. Lisa, you wet the bed, right? This ammonia smell must be from that. Sean pointed at Lisa. With a scary face from her father, Lisa was completely frightened. I spoke up for her instead. Lisa didn't wet the bed. Neither her bed cover nor her pajamas are wet. Indeed, Lisa had wet the bed a few times when she was younger. But that was temporary, and she hadn't done so in the last year or two. Sean, who only spoils her and doesn't do proper childcare, probably doesn't understand this. What? Sean's eyes widened. I said, "What do you mean by the smell?" It does smell a little, but it's not Lisa. When I sniffed Sean's clothes, indeed, there was a slight scent that might be described as such. But it was such a faint smell that if it were called a misunderstanding, I would believe it. What are you talking about? This smell is obvious. Enough. You two are annoying. Just don't come near me. In fact, get out. Sean was perhaps hungover, his thinking unclear, and his words were more aggressive than usual. I thought this might be my chance to escape from Sean. Understood. I calmly moved away from Sean and took Lisa's hand. If you want us to leave, we will leave. Take care of the house. You'll come back soon because you have no money. Sean perhaps didn't believe I was serious about leaving the house. He scoffed at my actions. I ignored Sean and began packing our bags in a carry-on suitcase. Seeing me seriously packing, Lisa quietly watched over me. Once the packing was done, I took Lisa's hand and left the house. Then, goodbye.
Yeah.
Still mocking my actions, Sean waved his hand dismissively as he stood at the entrance. I ignored him and left the house with Lisa. Sooner or later, I thought it would be necessary to distance ourselves from Sean. It's unfortunate for Lisa to be separated from her father, but it's necessary. Being around such a father would have a worse influence, I convinced myself. After leaving the house, I contacted the kindergarten and told them Lisa would be absent today. We killed time at parks and cafes, and in the evening, I contacted my friend Mandy. I asked if we could stay just for one night, and Mandy said, "I wanted to talk to you about something, so it's actually good timing," and gladly accepted us. I timed our visit to her house for when Mandy returned from work. And Lisa and I arrived there together. Sorry for the sudden visit. Is it a bother? Not at all. We help each other out when in trouble, right? Lisa, do you want some juice? Yes. Lisa had met Mandy a few times and was fond of her. Mandy had always treated Lisa very kindly, so she probably thought of her as a kind older sister. Mandy brought over some orange juice and offered it to Lisa. "Thank you," Lisa said with a smile. I felt relieved seeing her smile, as she had been tense all morning. So, what happened? Suddenly running away from home, what's going on? Mandy initiated asking about the situation, which made me feel more at ease. I explained everything about Sean's tyrannical nature and the events from last night to this morning. Just talking about it made my anger surge. Mandy listened seriously. I thought it might be something like that. I've always thought there was something off about Sean's behavior. And Mandy looked at me and Lisa alternately with a hesitant expression. I really struggled with whether to tell you this. What is it? What happened? I wondered what Mandy was about to say. I swallowed hard. It's awkward to say this in front of Lisa. But it seems like Sean is having an affair with his colleague at my company. I felt a dull shock weighing down on me at Mandy's revelation. What do you mean? Eager to hear the truth, I leaned in towards Mandy. As she began, actually, I braced myself. About a month ago, on a Sunday, 3 girls from my department went to the beach. One of my colleagues invited Sean and his friends. A month ago, on a Sunday? Wasn't that the day I suggested going to the amusement park and he said he had plans? Suspicion spread in my mind. Sean and his friends, 3 guys, also came, and they joined us for beach volleyball. They don't know my face, right? I've been to both of your weddings and you've shown me his photos many times, so I know him. But Sean had no idea I was your friend. My mouth went dry as I listened, and I drank water repeatedly. At that time, Sean and my junior, Brandy Smith, really hit it off. Brandy is cute and very popular with the men at work. She and Sean bonded and went somewhere together after playing at the beach. I've been told they've met up a few times since then. I'm sorry, I know you probably don't want to hear this, but I felt I couldn't keep it from you. I shook my head no, as Mandy looked apologetic while telling me the truth. So it was true. Sean was having an affair. Although surprised, I realized that I was unexpectedly calm. Thank you for telling me. It's been an eye-opener. I had been somewhat reserved towards Sean, who worked outside. But after hearing Mandy's story, I realized there was no need to hold back. I'm not going back to Sean. I'll make sure he regrets this. Then I'll help too. Since I work with his mistress, Brandy, I might be able to find out something. Mandy and I exchanged determined looks. The next day, after leaving Mandy's house, I went directly to the office and managed to get the documents I needed. I would be staying in a hotel for a while, but I had managed to sign a lease for a cheap rental property. So I planned to move in soon. Mandy also managed to get some information out of Brandy. Brandy, who looks up to Mandy like a big sister, seemed to answer everything she asked. I was shocked by the facts I learned. Filled with anger, I held back for now, waiting for the right time to act. Finally, the day for retaliation came. Mandy told me that Brandy was planning to visit Sean's house, my house, today. I left Lisa with Mandy and headed to my former home. It had been exactly 1 month since I left, and it somehow didn't feel like my home anymore. Seeing the high heels at the entrance confirmed my suspicions. Just imagining the kind of conversation the two might be having inside gave me goosebumps. I quietly opened the living room door, but nobody was there. Where could they be? As I listened closely, I heard a woman's voice coming from the bedroom. Hearing that indecent voice, I flung open the door, my face flushed with anger. So, you were cheating after all. The sudden appearance of me startled the naked couple, who shrieked absurdly at the sight of me. What are you doing here?
Ah.
Who is this woman? Ignoring the frenzied couple, I calmly took the divorce papers out of my bag. I came here to give you this. Here. I threw the divorce papers at Sean, hitting him with them. What is this? Coming here all of a sudden and throwing this at me, are you out of your mind? If anyone was out of their mind, it was undoubtedly Sean and Brandy. But explaining common sense to the unreasonable Sean would be futile, so I continued. Sean, you've been withdrawing money from our joint account, haven't you? What did you use that money for? I don't know what you're talking about. In front of Sean, who pretended to be ignorant, I thrust the passbook showing a balance of $5. Are you still going to feign ignorance after seeing this? If you don't know, shall I tell you? You spent all that money on Brandy, right? Sean froze on the spot. Brandy, puzzled that I knew her name, looked at me as if she'd seen a ghost. Oh, by the way, Mandy Irving from your workplace is my friend. Thanks for telling her everything about the affair, Brandy. It saved me a lot of trouble. Sean, you're just an ATM that gives her whatever she wants, right? Indeed, you've always bought everything for our daughter too. I showed them screenshots of messages between Mandy and Brandy that Mandy had sent me. They contained detailed information about the affair, such as the expensive bags he bought and when and where they went out. ATM. What is this? Realizing he had been treated like a cash dispenser, Sean was shocked and his eyes widened. Brandy trembled as she listened to the facts spilling from my mouth. Also, I heard this. Brandy, you've been struggling with enuresis, haven't you? Both Brandy and Sean turned pale. Yes. The reason Sean yelled at Lisa and me about the smell of enuresis a month ago was because of Brandy. Sean likely spent the previous day with Brandy, drunk and returning home without taking a bath. He became sensitive to the smell of enuresis lingering on Brandy's body until the next morning. Why would you bring that up? Sorry, but it's your own fault for cheating. Well, the worst one here is Mr. ATM over there. I scolded Sean again, who was standing there pale-faced. Do you still plan to deny the affair even with all this evidence? Just give up and sign the divorce papers. And be prepared to pay the compensation and child support in full. The mention of compensation and child support visibly shook Sean. What? You're joking. How can I pay for compensation and child support? It's your fault in the first place, isn't it? You never pay attention to me, always busy with Lisa. That's right. It's your fault. You should be the one paying compensation. Sean tried to shift the blame to me, which was so childish that my anger reached its peak. Oh, but you're always working hard, so you have money, right? Do you understand what you have done? You belittle my work from home and spoil Lisa too much. On top of that, you cheat, and why should I be the one to pay compensation? You realize how ridiculous you sound, right? I never want to deal with you again. From now on, talk to my lawyer. Goodbye. I left Sean and Brandy naked and exited the house. I heard Sean shouting, "Hey," and their voices arguing behind me, but I ignored it all. After leaving the house, I headed straight to Mandy's place. I just wanted her to listen. Sean called me multiple times afterwards, but I stubbornly refused to answer. Mandy advised, just block his number. So, I did exactly that and blocked Sean's number. A lawyer would handle the rest. Thank you, Mandy. I really owe you a lot. No, I should be the one apologizing for staying silent until now. It's going to be tough for a while, but if you need anything, just let me know. I was touched by my best friend's kindness. I thanked Mandy again and returned to my rented apartment. Lisa, I'm sorry. You wanted to be with Dad, didn't you? Feeling guilty about taking Lisa's father away, I apologized to her first. No, I love Mom. Dad is smelly, so it's okay without him. Lisa's innocent comment was both funny and dear to me. A few weeks later, Sean and I were officially divorced. I received $30,000 in compensation, and he agreed to pay child support monthly. Brandy seemed to have made advances towards other men at work too, making it difficult for her to stay, so she eventually quit. Of course, she and Sean broke up soon after their fight. Sean lost his wife, child, and mistress, ran out of money and credit, and lost motivation at work, eventually forcing him to resign. Now he seems to be struggling to repay his debts by doing part-time cleaning jobs. I feel no pity for him. Meanwhile, my work from home has taken off, and I now earn over $4,000 a month. More than Sean ever did as an office worker. If I can make Lisa happy with the money I earn myself, that's all I could wish for.
It really was the right decision to divorce you. You and your son are still as pathetic as ever. I make $200,000 a year, you know. It seems that my ex-husband just wanted to boast about himself. As proof, he didn't even try to ask about our current situation. Ah, right. I should introduce you to my current wife. This is Julia. He introduced his new spouse to me. What was he thinking? Ah, is that all? Are we done here? Bye then. Wait a minute. As I tried to leave, my ex-husband blocked my way again. Hey. Are you jealous because we look happy? Don't let your poverty twist your heart too. You'll only become more miserable. My ex-husband assumed I was unhappy. I was so angry that I felt sick. As I remained silent, he was about to say something more, but Steve interrupted him. Mom, why don't you fire this old man? What? My name is Kim. I am now 42 years old. I married Michael, a colleague from the same company, when I was 26. I continued to work after our marriage, but I quit my job when I got pregnant. Afterward, our son Steve was born. Once he turned 7 and started elementary school, child-rearing became a bit easier. Thinking it might be good to start working outside again, I discussed it with my husband. It seemed he had been waiting for this, as he agreed immediately. He probably thought it would help with our finances. But he began rushing me while I was job hunting. Did you find a job yet? No. Are you even looking properly? Any job will do, right? He seemed really eager for me to work. Moreover, while I was looking for a part-time job, he suggested, if you're going to work, isn't it better to work full-time? Even if not every day, how about 3 days a week for 8 hours each? Working too long would take me out of your dependent coverage, you know? Just because Steve is in elementary school doesn't mean he doesn't need any attention. I get home early, after all. However, Michael suggested that since I could put Steve in after-school care, working full-time 5 days a week would be better if being a dependent is a loss. He really seemed to want me to work long hours. I had said I wanted to work, so I couldn't argue much. But I was anxious since I hadn't worked for many years. Even if I decided to work full-time, I wanted to gradually get used to it. Quitting because it's too hard after starting wouldn't feel right. For now, I decided to start with a part-time job of about 20 hours a week, assuming I would work full-time eventually. Michael was complaining that I should start full-time right away. But when I said I would consider it if my health allowed, he reluctantly agreed. I never thought he was so concerned about our finances. Honestly, I found my husband's interference in job hunting annoying, yet I was also pleased. It's better to live long-term with someone who thinks about finances to some extent, rather than someone who is indifferent. However, I would later realize that this perception was wrong. One day, a few months after I started the part-time job, I received a message on my smartphone. Wondering who it could be, I checked and saw a name I hadn't seen in a long time. It was my former colleague and currently a colleague of my husband. It had been a while, so I casually read the message. But what it said shocked me so much that I exclaimed aloud. What? What does this mean? You must be joking. Long time no see. I saw your husband the other day, and he seemed really close to some woman. I thought it might be an affair, so I sent you this message. The message was informing me of my husband's affair, and it even included a photo. My heart was shaken. The photo clearly showed my husband, and he was arm in arm with a woman I didn't know. Of course, even if I knew her, being arm in arm would still be unacceptable. As I was shocked by the photo, another message came in. This woman is actually the daughter of the department head. She's also an employee of our company, so she definitely knows your husband is married. They're really bold, aren't they? I wonder if this is just how kids are these days. From my colleague's message, it was clear she was enjoying this gossip. But I replied with a thank you and closed the messaging app. I had never imagined my husband was having an affair. However, thinking back, there were many signs. Especially since he had been pushing me to work more at a time, when child-rearing was not yet stable. Today, my husband was supposed to be on an overnight business trip. Probably, it was a lie to meet his affair partner leisurely. The next day, when my husband returned, I immediately confronted him. Although I knew it was better to collect evidence calmly if we were going to divorce, I couldn't pretend to be fine. "What is this about?" When I showed him the photo, my husband was surprised at first. But then he quickly regained his composure and became defiant. "Ah, I see. You knew. Well, it can't be helped. As you can see." Honestly, I was surprised because I expected him to make some excuse. The woman is the daughter of the department head. The department head is guaranteed a higher position in the future. I guess you understand from this? To put it bluntly, marrying this woman benefits me. She's younger and prettier than you. My husband looked at me as if I was stupid. I thought about apologizing and crying, considering our son Steve. So I had thought not to divorce him. However, how could I with his attitude like this? He showed no remorse for his affair. Instead, he blatantly compared me with his affair partner and said she was better. As I remained silent, my husband became even more emboldened. "Well, that's the situation. I think I'll divorce you. It's a bit earlier than planned. But I was going to tell you eventually, so this is just the right time." And so, we got divorced. After being told so much, I couldn't say I didn't want to divorce him. It was better for my mental health to get a divorce quickly, get compensation, and end things. My husband paid the compensation at my asking price and transferred almost all his property to me. Naturally, I gained custody of Steve. For my husband, who was planning to marry the department head's daughter, giving away some money was probably nothing to him. In fact, when he was leaving the house, he left me with these last words. "Well, do your best living in poverty. Raising a child by yourself, you'll never be wealthy. Unlike you, I'm joining the celebrities. The department head's family is rich, after all. We'll probably never meet again, but struggle at the bottom." It's unbelievable that he could say such things, even though he has his own blood-related child. I felt relieved deep down to be divorcing such a man. Mentally I felt better, but everyday life was still tough. Even though I received compensation and property, I didn't have much savings, so I needed to work hard from now on. Living on just a part-time job was not possible. Eventually, I quit my part-time job and started working full-time. I felt sorry for Steve, but after elementary school, he had to go to after-school care by himself. Unintentionally, I ended up working full-time, and both my body and mind suddenly became very strained. The new job was unfamiliar, and I had to do all the housework by myself when I got home. Life changed completely from before, and the days passed by in a blur as I was too busy. Before I realized it, 7 years had passed since my divorce. But no matter how busy you are, humans adapt. Steve has become a middle schooler and can mostly take care of himself now. Because I've been busy, he has grown up to be quite a solid young man compared to other boys his age. He even cooks and does the laundry. Thanks to him, I've been freed from both housework and parenting. And for the past few years, I've had time for myself. Both my personal and professional lives are going very well. Now I can say it clearly, it was definitely good that I divorced such a man. If I had continued to be married to that awful man, I would never have achieved this life. However, one day while shopping at the local mall with my son, I ran into that awful person, my ex-husband, Michael. I hadn't noticed him, but he approached me. "Hey, isn't that you, Kim?" long time no see. You've aged quite a bit. Is that something you say when you meet someone after a long time? No person with normal sensibilities would ever tell a woman she has aged. That comment alone showed me that my ex-husband hasn't grown at all as a person. I became irritated within seconds and responded tersely. What? You look pretty old yourself. I barely recognized you. Honestly, my ex-husband really had aged quite a bit. I hadn't seen him in 7 years, but it seemed like he had aged twice that much. His hair was thinning, and he had a pot belly, a complete middle-aged look. Talking to my ex-husband felt like a waste of time, so I said, well, long time no see. But you don't really need anything from me, right? So, see you around, and tried to walk away. But it wasn't going to be that easy. My ex-husband blocked my path and started spouting nonsense. Hey, don't be so cold. We're finally all together. Let's catch up a bit. I really didn't want to hear anything about my ex-husband's current situation. The only thing I would want to say is about the child support payments. He stopped making a few years after the divorce. Child support isn't my right, it's Steve's right. Yet, there he was, daring to talk in front of Steve. But my ex-husband didn't care about my mood at all. He started rambling about his own life, which I had no interest in hearing. I remarried after that. To the daughter of the department head in that photo. Oh, he's not just a department head now, but a managing director. And thanks to that, I've been promoted to department head myself. I'm definitely on the winning side now. Honestly, no matter how much my ex-husband has climbed the corporate ladder, it doesn't affect me, and I'm not envious. All I thought was, so what? I was even more annoyed that he climbed the ladder yet didn't pay child support. It's truly stingy of a winner not to pay a few hundreds of dollars per month. My ex-husband continued to boast, ruffling my feelings even more. It really was the right decision to divorce you. You and your son are still as pathetic as ever. I make $200,000 a year, you know. Ultimately, my ex-husband just wanted to boast about himself. That's proof enough since he didn't even try to ask about our lives. Normally, a parent would be interested in their son's life, but here he was. Not even speaking to Steve, who was right in front of him. Truly an awful father. Right. I should introduce you to my current wife. Hey. My ex-husband called out to a woman looking at clothes nearby. The woman came over to us, and I immediately knew who she was. I had seen her in a photo once. Yes. She was my ex-husband's new wife. This is Julia, my current wife. How about that? She's way more beautiful than you were, right? He introduced his new wife to me. What was he thinking? This woman was the one who stole my husband while we were married. I'm glad we're divorced now, but it was a shock back then, and I harbored resentment. There's no way I could have a good impression of this woman. Even a dimwit like my ex-husband should understand that much. But he must really look down on us. It seems he can't even comprehend such basic things. Is that so? Are we done here? I'm not free, you know. Bye then. I said my goodbyes with an extremely displeased feeling. Of course, I didn't even glance at the woman, much less greet her. Wait a minute. As I tried to leave, my ex-husband blocked my path again. Stop it. There's no point in hearing about your family. Hey. Are you jealous because we seem happy? Don't let your poverty twist your heart too. You'll only become more miserable. My ex-husband assumed I was unhappy. It's none of your business. I'm perfectly happy, so leave me alone. The biggest misfortune recently was you talking to me. Even though I said I was happy. My ex-husband didn't believe me and pitted my situation anyway. Well, happiness varies from person to person, but poverty isn't happy, right? Don't strain yourself. If a single, divorced mother with a child were happy, there would be no unhappy people. With that background, remarriage is impossible for you. I'm just worried as your ex-husband, you know? While saying this, the expression on my ex-husband's face was the exact opposite of concerned. He was completely mocking me. When I looked at his wife next to him, she had a smug, mocking smile as well. I could never be friends with this woman. She's the worst kind, getting pleasure from looking down on others. Right? I told you. You're much better than her. Be confident. My ex-husband was flattering his current wife, comparing her to me and praising her to the skies. Well, she did help him climb the career ladder. So he's probably buttering her up whenever he can. Truly the worst kind of man. You're really the lowest of the low. I can't believe you were married to her. His wife mocked me despite meeting me for the first time. That's the worst kind of behavior in a person. I wanted to leave because I felt like I might respond if I stayed any longer. But my ex-husband stood in my way, so I couldn't move. Just so you know, we're still in love. So there's zero chance of getting back together with you. Don't get any weird hopes. My ex-husband was under some ridiculous delusion. To think he believed I had lingering feelings after he caused our divorce with his cheating. And 7 years later, he still thought so. His head was too full of fantasies, and I was speechless. As I was speechless at my ex-husband's ridiculous fantasy, he seemed to think he was right. Hey. Shocked into silence? It's tough being a man in demand. With his thoroughly middle-aged appearance, what part of him was in demand? I was beyond angry, I felt sick. As I stayed silent, my ex-husband was about to say something more. But then, Steve spoke up. Mom, why don't we fire this old man? What? My ex-husband was so baffled by what Steve said. Steve seemed quite angry, calling his own father this old man. Well, that's perfectly fine by me. What do you mean, fire me? Do you understand what being fired means? I'm not someone your mom can just fire, you know? You're in middle school, right? You should study properly. My ex-husband even spoke condescendingly to Steve. It's one thing to mock me, but it's unforgivable to insult my beloved son. Just as my anger toward my ex-husband was about to explode, I heard someone calling me. Hey, what's going on here? A man approached as he called out, and my ex-husband's face froze. Why are you here? Mr. President. My ex-husband questioned the man in front of him. Why shouldn't I be here? I'm just shopping with my family. Are you saying I shouldn't be here? No, I apologize. I didn't mean it that way. I was just wondering why you, the president, were talking to my ex-wife. Ah, that makes sense. She's my wife now, after all. What? She's the president's wife. I can't believe it. Actually, I had remarried the president of the company, where my ex-husband works about 3 years after I was widowed. I became close to the president shortly after my divorce when he approached me, while I was shopping at a supermarket. I had worked at the same company as my ex-husband, so I knew the president. My ex-husband had an affair with the department head's daughter, which led to our divorce, and then he married her. The president was well aware of this and, as a man, he seemed quite displeased by it. However, he felt he couldn't interfere with an employee's private affairs. That's when he spotted me at the supermarket and couldn't resist saying hello. I was surprised that the president remembered me, a mere former employee, by face and name, as I had been a receptionist at the company, which might have made it easier for him to remember. "It seems your marriage didn't go well. But I'm sure you'll find someone much better soon. Mr. President, I'm glad you remember me. But you don't have to worry about me, I'm doing fine." At the time, I had been divorced for less than a year and was still putting on a brave face. However, the president, with his extensive life experience, saw right through my facade and offered kind words. They say divorce takes 3 times the effort of marriage. No matter how smoothly the divorce goes, it's exhausting. I haven't divorced, but when my wife passed away, I barely felt like doing anything. It's tough when a couple who once loved each other parts ways. So, there's no need to pretend you're not hurting. The president knew the loneliness that comes with the end of a marriage. Indeed, while I felt it was better to have split, I was also feeling a mix of loneliness and emptiness at the time. So his words really resonated with me. Talking about it might ease your mind. Feel free to contact me anytime. I'll always treat you to a meal. He said this and gave me his business card. I felt it was too forward to contact him for about 2 years, but as time passed, I found myself wanting to talk to someone again. Finally, I decided to reach out to the president. Despite his busy schedule, the president made time for me and treated me to a meal. When I was an employee, he was still a department head and seemed unapproachable. But having a meal with him revealed he was a genuinely nice man. Perhaps it was easier because I was no longer with the company. But soon the president and I became good drinking buddies. About a year later, he proposed to me with a serious look on his face. "You're joking, right, Chris? Don't say things like that even as a joke." I thought it was a joke since he mentioned it while we were drinking. But the president was serious. "At first, I just wanted to cheer you up after your divorce. But being with you really settles me. I haven't felt this way about anyone since my wife passed away. Honestly, you've been healing me. If you're willing, I'd like to spend the rest of my life with you. Please give me a day to think about it," I said and consulted my son. "I don't mind." "It's up to you, Mom. Decide based on whether you like him or not." Since there was no opposition, I decided to marry the president. To be honest, I liked him. I thought of him as a drinking buddy, but I also felt healed when I was with him. We healed each other, so there was no reason not to live together. And listening to him talk about his late wife, it was clear how much he had loved her. Every time I heard his stories, I felt fortunate to be marrying someone who could love me as he did. I even felt a bit jealous of his wife. Thus, we became husband and wife. The president treats my son as if he were his own. He had no children with his previous wife, but they get along so well that they seem like a real father and son. I am truly as happy now as I told my ex-husband I was. My ex-husband turned pale and trembled when he heard I had married the president. He probably never imagined that his ex-wife, whom he looked down upon as poor, would be married to the president. "Dad, this man was mocking Mom. Fire him," Steve ruthlessly told on my ex-husband to the president. "You fool." "No, Steve. What are you talking about? We were just catching up." My ex-husband tried to cover it up, but it was obvious to the president. "You tend to look down on others," even at the company. I think what Steve is saying is true. I've heard various bad things about you from your subordinates. I think it's time for an internal investigation, so be prepared. My ex-husband never expected that Steve's words would be taken seriously by the president, leading to an investigation into his misconduct at the company. He apologized. I'm sorry. I may have been a bit harsh to your wife. I apologize. Can you please hold off on the internal investigation? Despite the crowded shopping mall, he apologized, clearly desperate to avoid the investigation. However, this act was practically an admission of his wrongdoing. The president was not swayed. No, I'll proceed with it regardless. By the way, the executive director you are close to has also been receiving bad reviews. I'll thoroughly investigate both of you. Upon hearing this, my ex-husband's wife also apologized. Please, not him. Just this man is fine, but leave my father out of this. Hearing her words, my ex-husband immediately began to argue with her. What are you saying? Are you abandoning me? Don't mess with me. There are plenty of men like you. Of course, my father is more important. Their marital spat was indeed disgraceful. And we didn't want to be associated with such behavior. So we ignored the arguing couple and left the store. That selfish couple probably wouldn't last long after this. They had it coming. The president quickly organized a team the next day to thoroughly investigate the conduct of my ex-husband and the executive director. The findings were damning: harassment and verbal abuse toward subordinates, favoritism in personnel decisions, and demands for entertainments from business partners using their positions of power. These abuses had been ongoing for years. Using one's position to solicit personal gains was unacceptable, especially in today's age. As a result, both my ex-husband and the executive director were stripped of their positions and reassigned to regional branches. Probably, my ex-husband knew this would happen, which is why he had apologized in the shopping mall. He was aware of his misconduct. Knowing yet continuing such behavior made it even more reprehensible. His career was likely over. According to the president, both eventually resigned from the company, likely fearing retaliation from the employees they had harassed. They chose to leave. However, their troubles didn't end with their resignations. They were sued by the employees they had mistreated. Disliked by most, their numerous abusive acts were well documented, and they lost the lawsuit, facing substantial damages. The financial ruin drove my ex-husband's wife to blame him, worsening their marital relationship, which soon ended in divorce. The frequent fights and his abusive behavior might even lead to another lawsuit from his wife for damages. Watching my ex-husband's downfall reinforced my belief in living a straightforward and honest life. Meanwhile, I was blessed with a child with the president. At 42, it was a high-risk pregnancy, but our baby was born healthy, bringing immense joy. Steve was thrilled to be a big brother, lovingly taking part in caring for the baby every day. We even talk about Steve joining the company in the future. Despite the challenges of parenting at our age, seeing our baby's sleeping face makes all worries vanish. I'm grateful for this new life and ready to face tomorrow with resolve.
Why are you always so stingy? It's not that I'm being stingy. You just waste too much. You throw away things that are still usable and rush to buy new ones. Isn't it better to have the latest things? If you keep chasing after new things, no amount of money will ever be enough. That's what I call being stingy. Greg is always like this, and if I stay silent, he just keeps buying new things. So when I see him looking at a computer, I end up saying, "Don't buy anything unnecessary." I am Sandra Brown, a 27-year-old working housewife. My husband is 5 years older, who was introduced to me by a friend. Before we got married, I didn't think he was such a spendthrift. But living together, it has become painfully obvious. The other day he said he was just going to the store. But he somehow came back with a microwave oven. What's this? Well, I was just out and happened to wander into an electronics store. And the clerk recommended it. It has an incredible number of functions, and it's unbelievably convenient. All these functions, but you don't even cook. And we bought a new microwave when we got married, didn't we? That was already 3 years ago. It's not broken and still works fine. It's a waste. We don't need to, and there's nowhere to put it. Don't say such stingy things. This one looks cooler and more stylish. Just throw the old one out. This isn't the first or second time something like this has happened. So, even though I don't want to say it, I end up having to. But according to my husband, that makes me look miserly. And recently, when I point things out, he starts snapping back. Shut up. Don't complain about everything I do. Despite such behavior, my sister seemed to approve of him since before our marriage. When he came to our house to greet. The reason is clear, it was because of his looks. My sister's criteria for choosing men are based on their appearance. My husband is quite handsome, a stereotypical good-looking type. Even I was struck by him when we first met, although I don't care much about looks. So, when we were getting married, my sister had a puzzled look on her face, wondering, why Sandra of all people? My sister is 3 years older and looks nothing like me. I resemble our father, while my sister takes after our mother. And our mother was a beauty that would make anyone turn their head. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that my sister inherited her looks exactly. From when we were young, she often said to me, "You're so ugly." When I started elementary school, my sister was in 4th grade. Because of her looks, she was quite noticeable even as a young student. You and your sister look nothing alike. Sandra's sister has a doll-like face. My teachers and classmates would often say. I felt that behind their words was the implication that, your sister is beautiful, and you are not. In middle school, expectations were high that Tracy's sister must be cute too. Leading to surprised reactions like, "You're her sister?" Although I was used to it, it still made me feel down. But in high school, I went to a different school from my sister. And such comments ceased, gradually making me care less. By the time I entered university, I hardly cared about appearances at all. Our parents never cared about our looks and loved us both equally. Repeatedly scolding my sister for her harsh words. Tracy. Why do you always say such things? She's your sister. But it's true, isn't it? Everyone around us says we don't look like sisters at all. I wonder why I have such an ugly sister. You. The person who says such things is much uglier. Too bad. Anyone can see that I am less ugly than Sandra. That's a clear fact. Enough. Despite being repeatedly scolded by our parents, my sister was unaffected. Perhaps growing up constantly being told she was cute by boys. And others twisted her personality. Looking down on me might have been a hobby of hers. Sandra, you've never had a boyfriend, right? Well, it can't be helped with that face. Unlike you, I've never lacked for boyfriends. They keep coming even if I turn them down. Maybe I should share some with you. No thanks. If you keep talking like that, you'll be single forever. Or even if you get married, it'll definitely be to some super ugly guy," she would say, laughing loudly. So, when I introduced my husband to my parents, she was absolutely shocked. She must have been waiting to see what kind of ugly guy I would bring. She probably intended to laugh at whoever I brought back. After graduating from university and starting to live on her own, she hardly ever returned home. However, she came back all the way when she heard about my marriage, just to ridicule me. But her expectations were dashed, and she must have been sorely disappointed. Moreover, she must have been displeased that her less attractive sister was getting married before her. Until then, she would occasionally contact me to tease me. But in the 3 years since I got married, I haven't heard from her at all. I didn't contact her either. It seems she still talks to our parents occasionally. But when she opens her mouth, it's only to ask for money. Like my husband, my sister is quite a spendthrift. She spends her salary as soon as she receives it, and by mid-month after payday. She calls to ask for money, which troubles our parents. "You're already 30 years old. Plan and use your salary to support your own life." Since she was so excessive, my father, who rarely raises his voice, seemed to have yelled recently. "Because she is like this, I don't think I'll have much to do with her in the future." But I never imagined that such a thing would happen. Having been married for 3 years, my husband and I sometimes have small disputes over how to spend money. But I try to let such trivial matters slide, as they occur in many marriages. But recently, my husband's attitude has begun to change. "You really are ugly, aren't you? You shouldn't say such things to your own wife. You know, I was quite surprised when I saw your sister during our marriage greeting at your home." "Why?" "Because she's super beautiful. I couldn't believe you are sisters. I even thought I might have married the wrong person." "Hey. But since we got married, I hardly see her anymore, which is a shame." Indeed, my husband was also gaping at her when he first met her. Of course, he didn't say anything since he was there for the marriage greeting. I wonder if he has always thought this way. I don't know why he suddenly brought up my sister, but it was quite a shock. I didn't want to be told such things by my own husband. Since then, my husband started coming home late. He leaves eagerly on weekends. When I ask where he's going, he sometimes says he's meeting friends or working on weekends. But his attire is quite casual. What bothers me the most is that sometimes I smell cosmetics on his clothes. However, he commutes on crowded buses every day. So it's not impossible that he might pick up the scent of a woman's perfume by chance. Even so, once I start worrying about it, it keeps crossing my mind every time I do the laundry. I thought, could it be cheating? Such suspicions bubble up. Once you start suspecting, there's no end. I feel it's wrong to suspect him just because of the scent of cosmetics, yet part of me can't help it. I hate to keep fretting over such thoughts, so I decided to ask him directly. "Hey, I need to talk to you about something." Good timing. "I have something to tell you too." "Really?" "I'm going to divorce you." "What?" It was a stretch from the beginning. Beauty and the Beast might work, but a beast and a handsome man don't balance out. A handsome guy needs a beauty, after all. Hearing my husband bring up divorce made me think my suspicions might not be unfounded. "Does that mean you already have someone else?" "I didn't say that. I'm just tired of living with a stingy, ugly person like you. Plus, you've been hiding something from me, haven't you?" "What? Hiding something?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "There is actually one thing. But I had decided not to tell him about it." "So you're going to play dumb, huh?" "Well, that's fine. Anyway, I'm divorcing you." Saying that, He handed me the divorce papers, already signed by him. You're cheating, aren't you? I couldn't help but ask him back. What? Are you trying to extort spousal support from me because you're short on money? Don't rely on me. What are you talking about? That makes no sense. But he didn't answer any more, and the next day he left the divorce papers and went out. When I woke up the next morning, he was gone. It was a holiday, and he would usually sleep until noon. It was strange, so I went to the living room and found only the divorce papers on the table. His clothes gone from the closet. I called him immediately. What's going on? I told you yesterday I'm divorcing you. Just sign it and send it off already. But, shouldn't we discuss this more thoroughly if we're going to divorce? I've decided. It's already settled. Nothing you say now will change my mind. Consider it payback for deceiving me. After that, he hung up the phone, and no matter how many times I called back, he never answered. What he was saying didn't seem to relate to the thing I was hiding. I thought he might be using baseless accusations to cover up his own infidelity. Since then, days passed without any contact from my husband. He left without listening to my side and became unreachable. If asked whether I could continue married life with such a person, the answer would be no. But just submitting the divorce papers without saying anything else felt unsatisfying. Thinking this, I had not yet submitted the divorce papers when I received a call from my sister. Hey, what are you thinking? What do you mean all of a sudden? What are you talking about? When are you going to submit the divorce papers? Huh? How do you know about that? I haven't even told Dad or Mom yet. Because Greg is staying at my place. What? Then it clicked. My husband's affair partner was my sister. That's why he suddenly brought up my sister. But there was no way they had any connection. When did they start such a relationship, and where? Since when? Huh? Since when have you been in that kind of relationship? About 3 months ago? We ran into each other in town, hit it off, and... What? Greg is my husband. What are you thinking? Going after your sister's husband? A course correction, huh? From the beginning, Greg was never right for you. He's perfect for me because we're both attractive. I wondered what she was thinking by saying that. But she must have been desperate to brag about stealing Greg from me. My husband too, having such a relationship with his wife's sister, shows a lack of moral restraint to an extreme degree. Because of that, I felt angry about being left and handed a unilateral divorce. But I no longer hesitated to submit the divorce papers. I wanted to divorce as soon as possible and become strangers again, a desire that prevailed. And I immediately submitted the divorce papers. Then, somewhat relieved, I felt as if a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Rather than liking my husband, I felt more obligated to stay with him because we were married. That's why I had been ignoring his wasteful spending and verbal abuse by telling myself, I can handle this much. I realized once again that my feelings for my husband had long since cooled. I wondered what I had been clinging to. I reported to my parents after submitting the divorce papers. Upon hearing the details, they were furious and immediately contacted my sister, trying to summon her and Greg to talk, but they refused to come. My parents offered for me to come back home and live with them. But I rented an apartment near my company and started living alone. I felt very clearly that my parents were being overly considerate because of the situation with my sister, so I thought it would be easier to be alone for a while. It was strange to me, but honestly, I wasn't as hurt as everyone around me seemed to think. The sympathetic looks from friends and relatives, knowing about it, felt heavier than the situation itself. That's why I haven't gone into details about the reason for my divorce at work. I just say it was due to personality differences, which isn't entirely untrue. Not long after I filed for divorce, my ex-husband remarried my sister. Upon hearing this, according to my mother, my father shouted, "Disowned. Don't you ever come across our doorstep again." I felt nothing and thought it was all irrelevant. But I felt somewhat sorry that my father had to shout so often because of me. Both my sister and my ex-husband are strangers to me now. And I thought I would never meet them again. However, by some bad timing or whatnot, I went to a restaurant to dine with a friend for the first time in a while. And there was my ex-husband with someone who seemed to be a colleague from his company. I couldn't help but look away, wondering why I had to encounter him there. Huh? Isn't that Sandra? As I tried to go to the restroom, my ex-husband, as if he had been waiting, approached me with a smirk on his face, unabashed. "Are you okay with this? Eating so leisurely here. Things must be tough for you, right? What are you talking about? I heard you're drowning in debt." What? I was momentarily stunned, not understanding what he was talking about. "You don't have to hide it anymore, I know everything. That's why you were always so stingy." I was really in a dangerous spot, huh? Dangerous? What are you talking about? If I had stayed with you any longer, I might have ended up being saddled with your debt. A debt of $500,000 is no joke. At his words, a puzzle clicked in my head. I muttered to myself. So that's what he had been talking about. The words about hiding something and playing dumb were about this. But I have absolutely no recollection of such debt. I live within my means, fundamentally not needing to borrow money or having any need to do so. If there was any, it certainly wasn't me. I thought, that's it. A certain thought crossed my mind. Who are you confusing me with? Huh? That's not a debt, but the amount of my savings. What? This was my secret. Actually, before getting married, I had dabbled a bit in FX, that is foreign exchange margin trading. A friend was doing it, and I tried it out with just beginner's luck. It somehow went well, and I made money easily, which scared me. I felt like I could lose touch with the value of money. If I continued like that, I would end up living a life controlled by money. A life of rejoicing and lamenting over profits and losses wasn't the life I wanted. I decided I was better suited to living an ordinary, modest life and quit. The savings from that time, $500,000, remained untouched. I thought about revealing this after getting married. But I hesitated to speak about it given my husband's spending habits. I could foresee that a spendthrift husband would rely on it. Plus, I thought he might encourage me to do it again if he knew it was so profitable. I had decided never to do it again, and I didn't want to argue over such things. So I chose not to tell him. Basically, how could an ordinary office worker like me accrue $500,000 in debt? Who would lend such an amount to me? Think about it. But Tracy said you had a $500,000 debt. And I needed to break up with you quickly, or I'd be stripped bare. I figured as much. That sounds just like something my sister would say. And so, my husband naively believed her and switched from me to my sister. It might be a coincidence that my sister's alleged debt amount matched my savings. But it felt almost deliberate, which was a bit funny. I think my sister might have been projecting her own issues onto me. If anyone, my spendthrift sister might well have significant debts. She's the type who can't resist getting what she wants, even if it means going into debt. Even so, my sister is just an ordinary office worker too. And it's hard to believe she could have that much debt unless she borrowed from dangerous places. Maybe that's also why she targeted my former husband. His company is fairly substantial. He earns significantly more than other men his age working at ordinary companies. Maybe she planned to marry him and use him to pay off her debts. What do you mean? This is just my guess, but isn't that debt actually my sister's? Tracy's. Like you, she's the type who only spends and can't save any money. No way. Maybe you should go home and check properly? My words turned him pale. Perhaps he was finally waking up to reality. Standing in front of my flustered ex-husband, I felt myself becoming increasingly calm. And then I thought again how glad I was to have divorced such a man. Now, I wish I could erase the reality that we were ever married. But it is an undeniable reality, and I needed my husband to recognize this reality again. Oh, right. I think it should arrive soon. What? I've asked a lawyer to send you a bill for alimony. Huh? It's natural, right? Now that we are divorced, you are supposed to pay alimony. You have $500,000 in savings and you still want to take money from us? Well, that's a different matter. After saying this with a smile, he just stood there speechless. Leaving him behind, I returned to my own table. Soon, my ex-husband disappeared from the restaurant. I felt refreshed, and the meal and drinks that night tasted exceptionally good. I thought I was truly done with him. However, the following month, my ex-husband contacted me. I picked up the phone, thinking he would say something about the alimony. I've been thinking a lot. Oh, really? Let's give it another try. Why would that be? I couldn't understand how he could reach such a conclusion. Besides, did he really think I would agree to such a thing? I was deceived by Tracy. But I've come to my senses. From now on, let's live as husband and wife. We can live it up with your savings. Essentially, he was dazzled by my savings. What a selfish man. Apparently, he had a big fight with my sister afterwards. As I suspected, my sister did have debts. Though not as much as $500,000, it still exceeded $100,000. Also, without me to curb his spending. My ex-husband had apparently squandered a significant amount and incurred a substantial debt. As he rambled on over the phone, I became so tired of responding that I just hung up and immediately blocked his number. Just as I thought my sister might contact me, the phone rang. And by accident, I pressed receive instead of hang up. Hey, I heard you have $500,000 in savings. Her voice was unusually chirpy. That's my sister. Both of us snagged foolish men. But let's not talk about something as cold as compensation. Let's get along as sisters from now on. Her clingy, sticky voice made my skin crawl, and I hung up without responding. Then quickly blocked her number. It was like they were the perfect couple for each other. After that, my sister ended up with nowhere to go but to stay with my ex-husband. Living a debt-ridden life in a shabby apartment, working from morning till night. My mother told me that my sister had repeatedly asked for financial help. But my father, who answered the phone, was furious. They often fought over money. And one of their fights escalated so severely that the police were called. And they contacted my parents. But my father told the police to lock them up or do whatever. Because they were no longer related to them. I thought, my poor father. I worried a bit about his blood pressure. Despite being cut off. My undeterred sister apparently went to our parents' house to ask for money next. Our family home was built by my great-grandfather and is quite old. I had thought about using that $500,000 for renovating the family home. But instead, I decided to buy a new house. A few months later, coinciding with my father's retirement, I applied for a transfer at work and moved to a rural area. I bought a house near my new workplace, where I now live with my parents. Of course, I haven't given my address to either my sister or my ex-husband. I embarrassingly explained the situation to my coworkers and asked them to tell my ex-husband and sister that I had left if they came looking. The coworkers sympathized with me a bit but kindly agreed. The new house has a fairly large garden, and my mother is delighted to be able to enjoy gardening. She is very good at cooking. Every day, I enjoy my mother's delicious meals. And I've quickly settled into my new workplace, enjoying life immensely. I'm grateful for the peace of everyday life. Despite everything, I plan to keep moving forward. Stop doing this. Huh? You have no right to say that. The husband boldly entered my home office, disrupting the space whether I was working or not. Why does it turn out like this? Are you serious right now? The husband's face was stern. Even as I worked from home, he criticized me as if I were merely playing around. And he wasn't the only one. It's useless talking to a woman like that.
Ah,
That's right. I didn't realize we had such a useless woman here. Even bugs are more useful, aren't they? Mom, that's disrespectful to the bugs. Sorry, I just couldn't hold back. Enduring such days became routine. My opinions were ignored, and my daily frustrations were freely vented upon me. Then, one day, as usual, I was in an important meeting at home when suddenly my husband entered the room. However, I did not notice him as I was wearing headphones. Brace yourself. You're unnecessary in this house, just a parasite. I'm in a meeting right now. The mother-in-law who entered later also began to scold. I was turning back to my computer to turn off the camera when the colleagues in the meeting screamed, "Run!" I turned around in shock. My husband held a bucket over his head and then dumped its contents on me. At that moment, everything felt like it was in slow motion. I felt an intense heat envelop my entire body. Ah! The contents of the bucket were boiling water. Need to disinfect you more. That's still not enough. Realizing the danger, I tried to head to the bathroom. However, my husband grabbed my arm, preventing me from escaping. Where do you think you're going? He pulled me by the arm, dragging me out of the room and into the living room, where the mother-in-law poured more boiling water on me. How about that? Did it disinfect a bit? I wonder. It's quite a big bug after all. Someone like you, a NET, should get out of this house. My fists clenched, I stood up. Perhaps filled with anger, I no longer felt the heat from the boiling water. Of course, that's my plan. I said that to the two of them. Someone like you, a trash, wouldn't survive out there. At that point, I smirked. What are you laughing at? She must have gone crazy. I then revealed my true self to them. You're saying you're the CEO of a company with a revenue of 20 million per year. Don't be absurd. I knew it, she's lost her mind. You don't have to believe me, but you're the ones who will regret it. For such a day, I had made various preparations. I went to my workroom and returned with the divorce papers. Here. The divorce papers. Is this okay? Are you serious? You were the ones who said it first. Ignoring the howling of the two, I left the house. A month later, my husband and mother-in-law came to visit me. This too was part of my plan. I am Courtney Williams, working at a company I started with friends during university. I studied economics in university. But we decided to do something fun and launched an e-commerce site. We handled various products, nearly identical to some major companies. To avoid being overshadowed, we decided to promote a unique concept. What's up, Sarah? Sarah was one of the original members. I've got an idea. What if we focus on products that seem like they wouldn't sell? Huh? Since it's a unique opportunity, let's go for it. I've already got approval from the other members. Looking at the product lineup Sarah suggested, they indeed seemed unlikely to sell. However, they were interesting due to their designs and low prices, and I felt they might just work. That actually might be interesting. Right? Shall we try it? At that time, we were doing this as a plate until graduation. Therefore, some members had already secured jobs elsewhere. However, our e-commerce site gradually began to get noticed online. And before we knew it, it was generating significant profit. Especially since I had no job lined up, I decided to continue managing it. By the way, what will you do, Sarah? I'll help you, Courtney. I don't have anything else I want to do. Then let's work hard together. There's something else I want to ask you. I was surprised by her request. No way, I can't do that. Maybe you would be better? Everyone else thinks it's a good idea too. You've decided this without me again. Sorry. So, what do you think? I hesitated, but it was flattering that everyone was relying on me. All right. But in return, I'll need you to work harder than ever as my right-hand woman. My parents gave their permission without any objections. When I told them I would continue as the CEO without seeking employment. Profits continued to rise steadily, and by the time I was 27, the company went public. It was around this time that I met Michael. The chance encounter occurred at a favorite general store. Michael was the owner, a position that had been in his family for generations. It's really cute. Thank you for always coming. Please take your time and look around. Sure. The cozy atmosphere of the shop and its assortment of products, not only from USA but also from abroad, were highly rated by me. I continued to visit regularly. As I visited frequently, we started to have various conversations. Originally, Michael seemed to have been a salaryman. However, his father's death put the survival of the shop in jeopardy. Weren't you anxious? Of course I was anxious. But I grew up here. My mom has a bad back, and I was the only one left. I see. That said, the sales are tough. Then Michael shared a startling topic. Besides, it's a boring story, but when I took over the shop, a person I thought was a friend almost tricked me. Really?
Yeah.
He was a real estate company president. If I had gone along with his plan, he would have taken the shop too. Despite his laughter, I could feel he had gone through considerable hardships. Because of that, I feel a dislike whenever I hear the title of president. Courtney thought, I'm a president too, but maybe it's better not to say that. By the way, what kind of work do you do, Courtney? I guess I'm an engineer? Wow, that's impressive. It wasn't completely a lie. In fact, when we were setting up the site, I had helped out friends and had some knowledge. There was no turning back now. I continued visiting the shop and bought various products to help out a little. About 6 months after I started visiting the shop, as usual, I went to the shop and Michael invited me out to play. Given all the conversations we had, our relationship was good. I couldn't immediately agree to go. It wasn't that I disliked the idea. I understood that Michael was serious and cared for his mother. Is it no good? Seeing his slightly lonely face, I agreed to go. I wasn't sure why I acted that way at the time. After several dates, Michael confessed his feelings to me. It was then that I truly realized that I liked Michael. 6 months later, he proposed, and we headed to meet for a marriage introduction. I'm still nervous, though. It's okay. My mom is kind too. I hope she accepts me properly. While we were talking about this, we arrived at his family home. Welcome. You must be Courtney, the one Michael has been talking about. Yes, that's me. The conversation progressed pleasantly from there. So, Courtney, what do you think about living together? Living together? I don't particularly dislike the idea. Courtney thought, maybe that's something that could happen eventually. Good. I'm glad. The broad smile on the mother-in-law's face at that moment remained in my mind for a while. I didn't understand it at all, the devilish side hidden behind her smile. It was just 1 week after we registered our marriage. By the way, what about the house we're going to live in? That's already decided. Huh? I hadn't heard anything about it. I didn't remember having such a conversation before. Let's go for now. Wait a minute. Where Michael had taken me was to the in-laws' house I had just visited recently. Could it be here? From today, we'll be living here. Remember, my mom mentioned it last time?
Ah.
I couldn't believe how foolish I had been. The question from the mother-in-law wasn't about eventually. It was about now. I couldn't just say no at this point. I had to bury deep inside the desire to enjoy a newlywed life just between the two of us. I optimistically thought it would be okay, since the mother-in-law seemed kind the one time we had spoken. I look forward to living with you from today. Likewise, please treat me well. Just one thing to remember. Don't forget that you are now a daughter-in-law in this house. Yes. The next day, the moving truck arrived, and I was allowed to use an empty room as my office. The change started to manifest about a week later. Courtney, do you remember what I told you? That you have become a daughter-in-law in this house. I remember that. Starting today, you'll start working. Then the mother-in-law handed me a broom and dustpan. I'm sorry. I have work right now. Huh? This is more important than that. I was suddenly scolded. Moreover, she kept watching me until I started cleaning. Michael was at the shop and not at home. I had no choice but to follow the mother-in-law's instructions. Have you never cleaned before, Courtney? I have. Then move more briskly. It was as if she had become a completely different person, ordering me around. And this was just the beginning, she would soon start asking for money. The mother-in-law had been a housewife and was not currently working. Remember, this is also part of a wife's duties. Courtney thought, that's not true at all. But I couldn't say that outright. I understood that much. After that, she did whatever she wanted. While I was out, she would eat the food from the fridge. And even order expensive seafood for delivery, making me pay for it. Of course, I couldn't eat any of it. I need to talk to you about something. Sure. Tell me anything. It's about your mother. I could instantly see Michael's face cloud over. What about Mom? How should I put this? She's been quite harsh towards me. I tried to put it as mildly as possible. I see. What exactly has she been doing? I explained everything that had happened so far. As I spoke, he nodded along, so I hoped he would finally take notice and say something. However, that night, it happened during a meal with the three of us. Courtney, you went and tattled to Michael, didn't you? I looked at Michael. He didn't seem to care at all about what I said and continued eating. You really shouldn't meddle. That was. I silently pleaded with Michael to say something. Michael put down his chopsticks and sighed quietly. It seems there's a misunderstanding. So I'll clarify, dealing with my parents is also part of a wife's duties. It was the opposite of what I had hoped he would say. Michael is right. You should just work for us. We don't need your opinions. That's a bit too much. Respecting your parents is basic. If you can't even manage that, what are you good for? It was clear that they were not understanding me at all. I hadn't married this man for this kind of life. After that, Michael finished his meal and returned to his room. Left alone with the mother-in-law, I had no way to fight back. If this happens again, you'll skip meals. I chose not to respond. But that only seemed to fuel her more. Are you listening? Looking down, she splashed water on me. When I raised my head, the mother-in-law was just smirking. I stood up to return to my office, but she stopped me. There's still cleaning up to do, right? That's your job. Biting my lip, I returned and began clearing the dishes. We're not monsters. As long as you do what you're told, that's enough. Courtney thought, what are you talking about? You're practically a monster already. Do you have something you want to say? No, nothing. After finishing the chores, I headed to my office. It was the only place in the house where I could be alone and undisturbed. I needed to think about what to do next. I couldn't continue being used like this in this house. I thought about consulting my parents. But the memory of their happy faces when I told them I was getting married came back to me. Courtney thought, I can't upset them. It had been only 6 months since the marriage. If I just did what was asked, there wouldn't be any complaints. I had to gather my resolve. I could bring up divorce when the time was right. That was my plan. You seem motivated today. It seems I had misunderstood before. From now on, I'll work hard for this household. That's the right attitude. When I nearly perfected the household chores, strangely enough, the usually complaining mother-in-law began treating me kindly. Eventually, we even started going out together. Courtney thought, maybe I should have been doing this from the start. From then on, I could live peacefully, except for Michael. Michael seemed displeased that I was getting along with his mother. I hadn't realized it before, but Michael was quite a mama's boy. That's when Michael decided to separate me from his mother. Sorry, but I need you to mind the store starting tomorrow. Mind the store? But I work from home too. It's not like it's a big deal. Besides, you can bring your computer with you, right? What will you be doing in the meantime? Huh? Isn't that obvious? I'm taking a day off. I couldn't help but sigh. You'll do it, right? Honestly, I liked the shop itself. Thinking positively, if I could work in that atmosphere, it might be okay. Okay, but I can't do it every day. All right. Since Thursday is the close day, I'll need you from Monday to Wednesday. I agreed to that and started tending the shop. However, customers hardly ever came. There were days when not a single person would visit from morning till evening. So, I decided to try listing our products on an online shop and promoted it using social media. Gradually, our sales began to increase. It looks like sales have been going up recently. That's right. It must be because of my good taste, huh? Maybe so. Most of the products in the store were selected by Michael. I acknowledge that much. However, products don't sell just because they're stocked. In reality, it's fair to say it improved because of my efforts. I deliberately hid that fact, thinking it wouldn't be recognized anyway. Then, a misunderstanding Michael began to go even further off the rails. Hey, what's with that? Oh, this? I've wanted it for a while so I bought it. Cool, right? Michael had bought a luxury car without consulting anyone. without consulting anyone? While we were arguing, the mother-in-law returned from shopping. What are you two doing? Michael bought a car on his own, using almost all of our earnings. At that time, my relationship with the mother-in-law was good, so she took my side smoothly. What are you doing? We don't need something like this. Michael ended up being lectured by his mother. Apparently, he couldn't stand up to her and could only make excuses. Don't nag. Hiding it would only delay the inevitable. It would come out sooner or later. Damn it. To be honest, including my income, we weren't short on money. But continuing this way would surely ruin us. I wanted to avoid affecting not only Michael but also the mother-in-law. So, I thought if there was no money available, that would solve it. I reduced the stock in the online shop, and the plan succeeded. Since I was also in charge of managing the sales data, Michael only knew the sales figures I reported. So, how are the sales this month? It seemed Michael hadn't learned his lesson yet. They're about this much for this month. That little? Isn't that a bit low? That's the challenging part of business, isn't it? Well, I suppose. Months went by as I adjusted the reported earnings. Then one night, Michael made a shocking accusation. You've been fudging the store's sales, haven't you? What? I'm not doing anything like that. It's strange that sales would suddenly drop every month. Are you embezzling? Do you have any proof? It started when you began managing the shop. That's when sales started falling. That doesn't mean I'm skimming money, does it? Are you arguing again? She's been fiddling with the sales and putting it in her own pocket. Courtney. I haven't done anything like that. The argument continued with neither side backing down. The day ended with the mother-in-law's intervention. But 2 days later, the situation took an unexpected turn. It turns out you were taking the shop's money after all. This topic again? I told you I didn't do it. Then what is this? Michael was holding an envelope. It appeared to contain several $1,000s. This was found in your office. You were hiding it, but too bad, now everyone knows, right? Mom? With this much evidence, it seems we have to accept it as true. Wait, please. I didn't do anything. Believe me. Stop embarrassing yourself. Just admit your guilt. Courtney thought, I've been framed. I hadn't expected him to stoop to this. Looking at the mother-in-law, she seemed completely convinced by Michael. It's a shame. I thought we had finally become close. Mother-in-law. I really didn't. Enough already. At that moment, I felt everything we had built up crumbling down. A hellish time was starting again. Forbidden from going to the shop, I was as if confined at home, forced to take care of the household. Not only was I expected to handle all the housework, but I was also increasingly being woken up in the middle of the night to run errands to the convenience store. Hey! What's with this awful meal? Are you joking? Normally, the mother-in-law would intervene in such situations, but now she ignored it all. Don't be too harsh on her. But she needs to understand her place, right? Courtney. Yes. Then the mother-in-law threw the meal I had prepared into the nearby trash can. What are you doing? It tasted bad. So, make it again. Right now? Of course. What you did was like stealing. This punishment is nothing compared to that. Maybe we should eat out instead of risking another bad meal? That sounds good. So that's settled. Finish up here. The two of them left to eat out, leaving me alone at home. I realized that living with these people was impossible. I quickly finished cleaning up and secluded myself in my room. I had contributed to the shop's sales, so I decided to shut down the online shop. This would surely impact them later. In reality, the sales were virtually non-existent even before I started managing the shop. By the time they realized this, I would no longer be in this house. I also cleverly used my shopping trips to obtain a divorce form, planning to present it at the best moment. It happened while I was working as usual. Michael barged into the room, rummaging through shelves and drawers, suspecting I was hiding money somewhere. Stop this already. Huh? You have no right to say that. Why does it have to be like this? Are you serious? Michael's face was earnest. Perhaps because it was his own lie, he couldn't back down halfway. Even though I was working from home, he accused me of just playing around. And it wasn't just Michael. It's useless talking to a woman like that.
Yeah.
That's right. To think we have such a useless woman here. Even bugs are more useful, aren't they? Mom, that's an insult to bugs. Sorry, I just couldn't hold back. Enduring such days was my daily life. Even if I voiced my opinions, they were ignored, and they freely vented their frustrations on me. Then, one day, as I was conducting an important meeting at home, Michael suddenly entered the room. However, I didn't notice him because I was wearing headphones. Brace yourself. Someone like you isn't needed in this house. Just a parasite. I'm in a meeting right now. The mother-in-law who entered later also started berating me. I was about to turn off the camera to face my computer when the colleagues in the meeting yelled, "Run." Startled, I turned around. Michael was holding a bucket overhead, then suddenly threw its contents at me. In that moment, everything seemed to move in slow motion. Then, my whole body felt as if it were on fire.
Ah.
The bucket was filled with boiling water. Need to disinfect some more. That's still not enough. Realizing the danger, I tried to escape to the bathroom. However, my husband grabbed my arm and I couldn't get away. Where do you think you're going? He pulled me by the arm, dragging me out of the room and into the living room, where the mother-in-law then poured more boiling water on me. How about that? Did it disinfect a bit? I wonder. It's quite a big bug after all. Someone like you, a NET, should just leave this house. I clenched my fists and stood up. Perhaps filled with anger, I didn't even feel the heat from the boiling water. Of course, that's my intention. I told them both off. Someone like you, a trash, won't be able to survive out there. At that point, I smirked. What are you laughing at? She must have gone crazy. I then revealed my true self to them. You're saying you're the CEO of a company with a revenue of 20 million per year. Don't make me laugh. She must have lost her mind. You don't have to believe me, but you're the ones who will regret it. For such a day, I had made various preparations. I went to my office room and returned with the divorce papers. Here. The divorce papers. Is this okay? Are you serious? You were the ones who said it first. Ignoring the howling of the two, I left the house. My destination was my parents' home. I paused at the doorstep, reluctant to enter in such a manner. Then, I heard a voice from behind. Turning around, there stood my mother. Kanami? What's wrong? Mom. Sensing something was amiss from my demeanor, my mother kindly ushered me inside. How is it? Tasty, right? Yes. Your coffee is always the best. So, what brings you here at this hour? Well, I explained everything that had happened to my mother. Normally gentle, she was furious this time. What is that? That's unbelievable. but I've made various preparations for this. Really?
Yeah.
We waited for my father to come home. And I recounted everything that had happened to him as well. My father wanted to confront them immediately, but I stopped him. Why stop me? My precious daughter has been treated so terribly. Calm down a bit. They'll come looking for us eventually. What do you mean? Just wait and see. It'll be worth it. That night, I received a call from Sarah. Are you okay? It was chaos after you left. Sorry, things got even more complicated afterward. Are you okay now? For now, yes. I've come back to my parents' house. About today. I'm sorry. It was during an important meeting. At this point, I remembered something crucial. Sarah. We always record the meetings for documentation, right? Yes, like always today. Oh. Are you thinking what I think you are? Did you catch on? Yes. Can you send that to me later? Okay. Unexpectedly, I had obtained the strongest evidence. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in a long while. A month later, Michael and his mother came looking for me. Please help us. I've been waiting for this. What? You're out of money and in trouble, aren't you? You're the CEO, right? We're still married. We'll have to give up the shop if things continue like this. That's none of my concern. About that divorce paper you gave me. Oh, did you bring it with you? Michael pulled a folded divorce paper from his pocket. Can you hand it over quickly? This means nothing. Saying so, he tore it up. Courtney thought, that's meaningless to you only. See? Just give up and come back. Let's live together again. Talk in your sleep, why don't you? I had one more card up my sleeve to drop them further into despair. Just come back without any fuss. That's impossible. You'll understand once you see this. I showed them the video of the meeting, which clearly captured them pouring boiling water on me. You see now? When did you even? You'll never understand, will you? What? This is solid evidence of domestic violence. And I was about to go to the police. Shall we go together? Michael? What do we do? Wait a moment. I'm thinking. They seemed on the verge of arguing among themselves when my father came out. Courtney. Dad. I thought I'd say a word. I need to pay back for how they treated my daughter. Seeing my father, Michael and his mother were visibly shaken. Perhaps we should just give up. I can't back down here. You should listen to your mother. Now, what shall we do with these two? Father was more than ready to take action. It's a hassle, maybe I should just call the police. I pulled out my phone. Seeing this, the two of them fled the scene, though there was really nowhere for them to run. Stupid, running as if there's somewhere to go. There was still more to come. If you had stepped in, Dad, we would have needed the police for a different reason. My father and I shared a laugh. Now, it was time to finish this. First, I went to the police with the evidence. They began an investigation based on the video. Furthermore, I headed to a law firm to proceed with the divorce. Sarah, thanks for last time. You really helped me out. I just did what needed to be done. Courtney is not only a precious friend but also the president of our company. Is that latter the real reason? Who knows? Afterward, my divorce with Michael was finalized. While he wasn't arrested for domestic violence, he faced a fine. Moreover, considering everything since our marriage, I decided to claim alimony. For Michael, being brought down by his beloved money seemed most fitting. Then, I went to a certain place. Long time no see. Courtney. What are you doing here? You put this shop up for sale, right? Because you couldn't pay the alimony and had debts, huh? Where did you hear that? I had a lawyer investigate Michael. It turned out he had been borrowing regularly to cover living expenses. Moreover, his mother apparently did not know about this. This shop isn't yours anymore. What do you mean? Forgot who I really am? No way, it's you. Exactly. From today, this shop is mine. I'll make good use of it, so why don't you hurry back to your mom? You. She'll probably comfort you, right? Leaving a crumbling Michael behind, I left the scene. After that, I renovated the shop I had purchased, breathing new life into it as a new business. Of course, the sales are doing well. We are still growing and will continue to do so. Exiting the OBGYN were Jeff, my husband, and an unfamiliar woman. No way. Jeff, you were having an affair? I had witnessed my husband's affair. Moreover, it seemed his mistress was pregnant. In a panic, I approached them to ask what was going on, and she said, "I'm pregnant with your husband's child. Please divorce him quickly." Despite being in front of his real wife, she was utterly unfazed and selfishly asked for a separation. I was dumbfounded by Tracy's audacity. There was no point in staying married to Jeff under these circumstances. All right, I said, if that's what Jeff wants, let's do it. Then the two of them looked at each other, held hands, and began to celebrate. So, we don't have to hide our trips anymore?
Yay!
Huh? Trips? Actually, we're going on our honeymoon next week. I was going to lie and say I was on a business trip, but there's no need to sneak around anymore. Their forthrightness may have stemmed from my agreement to divorce. They felt free to say anything in my presence, revealing details I hadn't even asked for. Their selfish behavior continued thereafter. I had told Jeff we needed to talk, but he hadn't returned home in days. Were they planning to talk after returning from their trip? I had thought so until one day. Unbelievable. 33 filled-out divorce papers were mailed to me. Among them were photos of my husband and his mistress together, clearly meant to harass me. They clearly wanted a quick divorce, but why send these during their trip? They didn't give us a chance to talk, just sent these papers unilaterally. Rebecca, nice guts. Be prepared. Something snapped inside me. My name is Rebecca. I'm a nurse at a general hospital. I met Jeff 3 years ago at a friend's wedding. Unlike me, who is shy and not good at conversation, Jeff was the life of the party and stood out among the guests, which piqued my interest. After the reception, everyone moved to the venue for the after party, which was informal. I sat at the far end of an island table with Claire, a high school classmate. Then, Jeff sat down next to me. I hope it's okay, I sat next to you, he said. Despite my introverted panic, he continued to talk to me without hesitation. Do you have a boyfriend? No. Where do you work? Oh, right. How old are you? Are we the same age? He bombarded me with questions. When Jeff's friend noticed my discomfort, he teased Jeff. Dude, you're asking too many questions, she's shocked. His friend's comment made Jeff realize he might have scared me. And he blushed, apologizing, really sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. I was just curious. Man, he's been saying how cute you are since the ceremony. He's a good guy, give him your number. I was egged on by Jeff's friend. At that time, I didn't have a boyfriend or anyone I was interested in. So I agreed to exchange contact information with Jeff. When I agreed, Jeff showed a big smile, highlighting his dimples. Thank you. I'll definitely contact you. And he did the next day. Jeff invited me out for a meal. Alone, he seemed less boisterous and more hesitant. Do you have any favorite foods? He mumbled. Jeff was a bit shy, cute with his noticeable dimples. I started to find him adorable. After several dates, our relationship progressed. About 6 months later, Jeff proposed, and we quickly decided to marry. Once married, we moved in together, but I had some concerns. Hey, what about the wedding expenses and the rent? And other costs for living together? I brought it up indirectly, as it was hard to talk about. I work as a nurse and believe my salary is fairly high. However, Jeff works as an office clerk at a manufacturer. My salary and bonuses were significantly higher than his. And I wondered if he might feel uneasy about it. However, Jeff casually said, "Why not go halves? Right now, I earn less and honestly don't have much saved. But I'll try my best not to lose to you, Rebecca." My worries were unfounded, as Jeff seemed more positive than I expected. But I had another concern. You know, I have night shifts. I come home in the middle of the night or in the morning, and my work hours are irregular. Can you help with the household chores? My job as a nurse means irregular hours. Honestly, it's hard to manage without sharing household chores, which was crucial for me. Household chores. We should do them together, right? If you're okay with a guy cooking. I can cook and do the cleaning and laundry without much hassle. Let's work together. This reassurance was similar to our earlier conversation about salary. Jeff had lived alone before, so he was capable of handling chores without feeling burdened. He eased my fears, and we registered our marriage without any issues. Our friends and both families celebrated our new beginning, and we started our life together. Jeff kept his promise to actively do household chores. After a night shift, I'd return home to find pasta wrapped and waiting in the fridge. The cleaning and laundry were well taken care of. On days I cooked, Jeff would eat heartily, asking for seconds. Delicious. Is there more? On weekends, he would take me out on dates. We lived blissfully, just the two of us. All that was left was for us to have a child, for everything to be perfect. However, conceiving turned out to be more difficult than I had anticipated. Honestly, I had naively assumed that getting pregnant would be easy once we were married. It seems many people might think the same. But reality often proves otherwise. Even after a year of marriage, I had not become pregnant. I was 28 at the time, and I had hoped to have a couple of kids by the age of 30. A desire I had shared with Jeff before we married. However, Jeff didn't seem to be in a hurry, saying, "Let's not rush it." Perhaps he was right, as these things can't be forced. But my concern wasn't just about not rushing. Our intimacy had significantly decreased compared to when we were first married. No matter how much one might say it's out of our hands, without intimacy, there can be no children. Initially, we slept together in the same bedroom. But due to my job, I often came home in the middle of the night, frequently waking Jeff up. Eventually, Jeff suggested I wake up with even the slightest noise. Maybe we should sleep in separate bedrooms? This separation likely also played a role in our difficulty in conceiving. I began to feel somewhat depressed about our chances of having children. Still, our relationship wasn't bad, and I enjoyed my time with Jeff. So I tried not to dwell on it too much. However, 2 years into our marriage, I could feel our happiness beginning to crumble. You're coming home late again today?
Yeah.
I have a drinking party tonight. I see. What time will you be back? Not sure. Probably after midnight. That's late. Haven't the drinking parties been a bit too frequent lately? Lately, Jeff's returns were very late, and his frequency of drinking parties had increased. He was often away on weekends for entertainment. And I felt disappointed about the lack of time we spent together as a couple. However, my husband dismissed my concerns, saying, "Rebecca, you're a woman, you don't understand the importance of these drinking parties. How much the bosses like me can really make a difference at work. Please don't complain about work-related matters." "I'm sorry." "Well, I'm heading out." Seemingly upset by my words, Jeff slammed the front door as he left. The vibration and air pressure from the door closing knocked over a photo frame on the entrance hall table, a picture of us smiling at our wedding. Left alone, I sighed deeply, and slowly set the photo frame upright before heading to work. I understood the importance of workplace relationships. But it wasn't just the late returns. Recently, Jeff's attitude towards me had clearly changed, causing me anxiety. Again, he didn't make dinner. Previously, Jeff would prepare meals before his work to ease my burden when I returned from night shifts. But that had stopped. Eventually, I had to prepare meals myself after a short nap. I also had to point out, "Why haven't you done the laundry?" The laundry basket was overflowing, yet it remained untouched. Today was supposed to be Jeff's turn to clean. What's the big deal? I was busy. It is a big deal. The basket is so full. Where am I supposed to put the clothes I wore today? Oh, stop nagging. If you're going to complain, just do it yourself. Jeff lay on the couch, fiddling with his phone and ignoring me. I ended up doing the laundry myself, as he made no move to help. This way, my household chores burden continued to grow. We had agreed to share household responsibilities before marriage and set rules together. But those rules had gradually fallen apart at Jeff's convenience. He had changed. He was always late due to overtime or drinking parties, and on weekends. He would go out alone, unlike before. He used to be so kind, but now even his tone had become harsher. I dreaded to think it, but a horrible thought crossed my mind: infidelity? No, I mustn't accuse my husband without evidence. I sternly dismissed the thought. But as time passed, Jeff continued to change, and I couldn't help but become suspicious. Hey, what is this? A colored lipstick, obviously for women, fell out of the suit Jeff wore to work. Oh. I bought some lip balm because my lips were dry. But it seems I accidentally picked up a colored one, he said, his eyes darting around nervously. Flustered, he quickly retreated to the bedroom. "I'm tired, going to sleep." It was suspicious, but if he said it was a mistake, there was not much I could do. I had to back down this time. However, another day brought a new issue. Several thousands of dollars had been transferred from our joint account for living expenses to Jeff's personal account. "Jeff, why is money from our living account being transferred to your account? I overspent this month." "It's not a big deal." "It is a big deal. Don't use it without asking. We need to save for the future." Another lecture? Sorry, I'll be careful. After saying this, he retreated to his bedroom again. Yet, in the following months, he continued to withdraw money without my consent. "Jeff, did you use our house money again? I asked you to stop, didn't I?" "It doesn't matter. We don't have kids anyway." I almost yelled, "That's because you're not interested in having them." But I held back, biting my tongue. It's not just about that. I don't understand why you need to spend $1,000 to $2,000 a month just because we don't have kids. What are you spending it on? Why do I have to explain every penny I spend to you? Jeff snapped back, getting defensive. Even when we're arguing like this, Jeff never puts down his smartphone. He keeps it with him even when going to the bathroom or taking a bath. It's like his wife is not me, but his smartphone. Can't you just put down your phone for once during such times? Look at me and talk. I couldn't help but get emotional too.
Ah.
Enough. You're so annoying. Just let me be. Saying this, he retreated to his room while still looking at his smartphone. He says he wants freedom, but isn't he already doing whatever he wants? Where did the husband I loved go? I haven't seen his dimpled smile, which I loved, in who knows how long. When he's home, he's always irritable. The trace of his kindness has completely vanished. What do I even like about this man anymore? I feel my feelings for Jeff cooling down more and more. I spend my days questioning whether I should divorce him. Then one day, Claire, a friend from nursing school, contacted me. Want to catch up over a meal? It's been a while. Yes. I'd love to. It's been so long, hasn't it? Where should we meet? At your place like usual, or my house? Actually, it'd be better near my workplace this time. Sorry, but could you come here? And how about around 3 p.m.? Claire, though she works in a different hospital, is a nurse like me. She suggested meeting at a cafe near the OBGYN where she works. Usually, when Claire and I meet, we just hang out at one of our homes and have a leisurely meal, but this time was different. Though it struck me as odd to meet at 3 p.m., neither lunch nor dinner time. I didn't dwell on it much since I was looking forward to seeing Claire. On the day I was supposed to meet Claire, I arrived at the designated cafe to find her looking unusually somber. Is something wrong? I asked Claire, sensing her serious mood. After a moment of silence, she spoke heavily. Don't ask anything, just look outside the window for a while. Outside the window, I could clearly see the OBGYN where Claire works. I vaguely understood what she meant, and we both stared out the window in silence for a while. Then, the moment came. As I watched, I saw Jeff, my husband, wrapping his arm around an unfamiliar woman's waist and entering the OBGYN together. The woman next to him appeared to have a slightly swollen belly. I see.
Yeah.
I kind of had a feeling something was going on. My eyes began to well up with tears, and my grip tightened on my coffee cup. Claire, it's such a nice day today, isn't it? Really warm, and the temperature is just perfect. As I said this, tears started rolling down my cheeks. Rebecca. Claire held my hand. She probably didn't want to know either. That a friend's husband was having an affair. Claire had been at the wedding where my husband and I met and was right there when Jeff first talked to me. So she knew his face and name well. She had seen him come to the OBGYN with another woman and had contacted me. I'm going to head back now. As much as you're my friend, I can't just disclose patient information carelessly. I'm sorry, I can't do more. You should talk to Jeff. Claire, thank you so much. I'll talk to him. No worries. Call me if you need anything, okay? I'm always on your side. And don't let him see you crying. Wipe your tears before you go. Saying this, Claire wiped my tears with her handkerchief. She had always been like an older sister to me. I thanked her again and waited outside the OBGYN for them to come out. After a while, when they appeared, I hurried over to them. Jeff, congratulations on her pregnancy. You two look great together, I said, forcing a smile. The two of them looked shocked and turned to each other. Jeff, is this your wife? She didn't seem to know who I was and asked Jeff, who turned pale. Wah, what are you? Despite usually only looking at his smartphone, now he was staring at me with wide eyes. What's the matter? Weren't you at work today? I smiled sweetly and asked my husband, who stuttered, trying to think of an excuse. Then he blurted out, "No, you see, she's just a friend's girlfriend. And I came with her as a companion." What a transparent lie. Faced with such a strained excuse, I couldn't help but sigh loudly. But Tracy snapped, annoyed by Jeff's attempt to casually handle the situation. "Jeff, you said we were going to divorce, didn't you?" "Well, yes, but I haven't really talked about it yet." "Oh? You said you were going to divorce?" "That's news to me." "Jeff, you haven't said anything?" Caught between his wife and his mistress, Jeff was at a loss for words. "Let's not do this here. How about we move somewhere else?" I led them back to the cafe where I had been with Claire. We each ordered a cup of coffee and took a moment to calm down. During this time, Jeff looked down, refusing to meet my gaze. Today, it seems Jeff regards the desk, not his smartphone, as his wife. However, Tracy is directly looking into my eyes. "My name is Tracy. I'm in a relationship with Jeff, and as you just saw, I am pregnant with his child. Please divorce him immediately." In front of his actual wife, without flinching, the mistress asked for a divorce, leaving me so stunned that I stopped mid-motion while trying to take a sip of my drink. Tracy's eyes were intensely serious. It was as if she considered me the final boss, fully ready for battle. To not be overwhelmed by Tracy, I clenched my fists under the table, maintaining my composure, and asked, "How long have you and Jeff been involved?" "Since a year ago." "A year ago?" That's when Jeff's sudden increase in overtime started. It was also around that time that he began to grow cold towards me. He became distant because of her. The lipstick in his pocket, the withdrawals from our joint account, all because of Tracy. Now that I think about it, it all adds up too well. The dots were connecting in my mind. So it's been a year. And what does Jeff want? Upon hearing this, Tracy glared sharply at Jeff. Startled by her gaze, Jeff flinched. It seemed he was pretty much under Tracy's thumb. Despite his usually arrogant demeanor at home, frustration welled up inside me. Well, if it's out, then there's no choice. Let's get a divorce. It's unfortunate, but what can we do? There's a baby on the way. Exactly. For the baby's sake, please divorce us right away. Both my husband and his mistress, perhaps emboldened, began pressing me for a divorce. My feelings for Jeff had indeed been cooling. But why should I let them dictate the timing of our divorce? You too. As I tried to speak, Tracy cut in, "Since I've entered a stable period of my pregnancy. We plan to go on a honeymoon next week, before the baby arrives." Hey, don't say that. A honeymoon? They planned this even before we divorced. Truly unbelievable. Everything's out in the open now, isn't it? Well, that's true. Rebecca, that's what's happening. We're going on a honeymoon next week. I was going to lie and say I was on a business trip. Their statements were so absurd that I almost lost track of what they were saying. Was my husband always this foolish? Feeling somewhat detached now, I said, "Sure, go ahead." Upon hearing this, they looked at each other and burst into smiles, beginning to hold hands. Really? That's great, Tracy. We're free now. Can I stop hiding it? Can I post lots of pictures with Jeff on social media? Well, hold on, social media's tricky. You never know who's watching. It wouldn't be great if people found out I got someone else pregnant right after the divorce. You want to hide our relationship? That's awful. sorry. I didn't mean to make you mad. Somehow, they started a lover's quarrel right in front of me. What was I even witnessing? Well, I'm going. Jeff, let's sort out the necessary procedures later. I said this and left the cafe, leaving them behind. Tracy really seems like a handful, I thought, almost as if it were someone else's problem. As I headed home, no longer caring about any of it. That night, Jeff didn't return home. Not just that night, but a week passed without him returning. Despite his demands for a divorce, we couldn't even talk about it if he didn't come home. As I pondered this, looking at the calendar, I remembered they had gone on their trip starting yesterday. Maybe he plans to talk about the divorce after they return, I reasoned. However, that day, a thick envelope arrived at home. It was from Jeff Thompson, my husband's name. Opening the envelope, I was baffled to find it stuffed with dozens of divorce papers, 33 to be exact. Moreover, 15 of them had photos of Jeff and Tracy enjoying themselves pasted on them. And on another 17, messages like, "Divorce quickly, I put plenty in so you can't mess it up." And, "For our child, get rid of the old lady," were scrawled as if struck by a blow. There were also notes like, "Your house belongs to me and our child now." How does that even make sense? Fury bubbled up inside me at the outrageous contents. And they had the audacity to send this during their trip? Not even giving us a chance to talk, just sending this stuff, trying to force a divorce? Nice guts. Be prepared. Something snapped inside me. Not sure if Jeff knew about the mass mailing, but since he had signed them, I could file for divorce, right? I immediately went to the lawyer's office and submitted the divorce papers. Later, possibly after returning from the trip, my now ex-husband called. "Hey. What the hell is this?" He was panicking as soon as he picked up the phone. I could guess why he was so flustered, but I deliberately asked, "Is something wrong?" "Something wrong?" I come back from a trip, and when I finally go home, there's a demolition crew at our house. What the hell is going on? Explain this to me. In fact, on the day I filed the divorce papers, I had a mind to teach Jeff and Tracy a lesson. I remembered Tracy claiming the house. "That woman said she'd take our house, huh?" Thinking it would serve them right and be the most effective revenge, I said, "Mother, I need to talk to you." And had been discussing my husband's misconduct with my in-laws. Despite our strained relationship, I had always gotten along well with my in-laws and thought they might help. When I explained the situation to my in-laws, they were furious and told me to send all of Jeff's belongings to their house. The in-laws were absolutely livid to think he would get his mistress pregnant. He should really be taught a painful lesson. They promised to help with anything. I immediately shipped my ex-husband's belongings to his parents' house. Now, it would be up to the in-laws to handle things. I also moved all my belongings and finalized the procedures to demolish the house and clear the site. By the time my ex-husband returned, the demolition had already begun. In just another week, it will all be cleared up, it seems. What? I heard from Tracy that she was getting the house. So I had it demolished to prevent that from happening. It's impossible to think of you, that woman, and her child living there happily together. Don't mess around. How can you just do that? That house and the land it's on belong to my father. You, an outsider, can't just decide to do something like that. Yes, I know that. That's why I discussed it with your father. He said that a foolish son who cheats and gets someone pregnant doesn't deserve a house. He told me to tear it down. You told my parents. Yes, I told them everything. That you had an affair and that she is pregnant. They were quite angry, you know. What have you done? I was supposed to start living with Tracy and the child next week. I don't know about that. Oh, and since we are already divorced, don't call me again. If you need something, contact me through a lawyer. When did we get divorced? I didn't hear anything about that. And what's this about a lawyer? What? A huge stack of divorce papers arrived from Tracy. I filed them immediately. And thanks to all the evidence photos of the affair that Tracy included with the divorce papers, the divorce proceedings went smoothly. Tell her thanks for me. She did what? What is she doing? Please, we're going to have a child, and now we've lost our home. And Tracy only has a part-time job, we really don't have any money. Don't ask for compensation, please. I've already told you, I don't know about that. I'll be seeking a generous amount of compensation from you and Tracy. Just so you're prepared.
Bye.
Then. I said this and hung up without waiting for a reply. By now, my ex-husband must be wearing a miserable expression. It's a pity I couldn't see his face directly. But this should make him painfully aware of how terrible his actions were. Despite his repeated calls, I ignored them all. Later, my ex-husband was ordered to pay $25,000 in compensation. I doubted he could easily afford such a large amount from his savings. But I made sure through my lawyer that he would pay no matter what. He would probably turn to his parents for help, but since they said, "We have no intention of helping a son who cheated," he likely wouldn't receive any support from them. He got what he deserved. As for Tracy, because she sent those provocative divorce papers and photos and engaged in adultery knowing Jeff was married, I managed to get $10,000 in damages from her. I thought they would start afresh, Jeff, Tracy, and the unborn child. But it didn't work out between them. Because Tracy posted photos on social media of their vacation while still technically married to Jeff. Their affair quickly became public knowledge. The gossip spread, eventually reaching Jeff's workplace, causing a huge scandal. Jeff was furious that she posted on social media despite his warnings. But when he scolded her, Tracy lost her temper in turn. In the end, their petty quarrel led to their breakup. What a foolish story, I thought, but how they lived their lives was no longer my concern. I continued working as a nurse. Though divorced and single, somehow, I felt more at peace than when I was married. Work is busy and challenging, but every time a patient thanks me, I feel fulfilled and glad to be doing this job. After everything was settled, I contacted Claire, who had been so supportive. I got divorced. It's all over. You did well, she said, crying. Having such a kind friend who would cry for me made me feel truly fortunate. Claire and I promised to go on a girls' trip together. I might be wary of love for a while, but someday, I hope to meet a kind man who will cherish me.